honey, when the plague goes live just between you and I, that's an industry sign that they're all done testing it. And come 2025, they will all be confessing it. And then a few small fry fall guys all fly from the precipice, who were doomed to be wasted like shell corporations, dissolving to vapor, then gone with the resonance, gone with the sense and the sentiments, gone with the dust of the remnants, gone with the ghosts of the regiment, gone like those families in Gaza whose bodies and homes are demolished when Israel sets up a settlement. Gone like your chance at a settlement, gone like the hope of apologies out of those funding our deadliest research and backroom development. Gone like your shot at a measly I'm sorry from the mouths of our own bioterrorists. God, you cannot imagine the face of the monster. You can't even fathom the scale of its carapace. It's under your feet, yet you're barely aware of it. You see it's quietly judging the scope of your suffering, sizing you up like a therapist. Then it rides in your guts like a parasite, growing in size and excreting a culture that's purely embarrassment. Equal parts Manson and Maryland, equal parts something we push into madness and something we'll gladly exploit and objectify 50 years after it perishes. Carefully crafted and planned and arranged like a monarchy's marriages. Fucking cousins or otherwise, scourge of the colonized, staged and displayed for the sake of retaining those imperial barracks. And all to expedite a special type of anglicized dysplasia. The kind where half the world is waking up to learn they're being raided, raped, and robbed of all their heritage by Charles and his caravan of 30 servants' carriages. The kind where each in the procession is worth infinitely less, till eventually they're paid in sums of crown-approved disparagement and bonuses of shame, till they're finally told to thank the highest-ranking inbred pig named king of every garrison. One who rose into his power all immaculate, like Harris did. Well, now that garishness is melting down like paraffin that hardens in a shell and shelters terrified and threatened royal terrapin. Those that rule with zero question, although nobody elected it. Democracy was here till we dissected it. Democracy was here until the exhibition exodus. And the loss of that democracy is just a threat for those who've yet to recognize the scent of bait or know the taste of desiccants. Democracy was here and now the smear is all that's left of it.
Democracy was here and now the smear is all that's left of it.
Mother and baby on razor's edge, don't give a shit what your paper said. Economy creeping up out of red as they divvy a shitty little bit of bread. And miles away from that lady's ledge, her senator wake and he's safe and fed. And aide got a paper to read in bed, jerking him off as they count the dead. Mother and baby on razor's edge, don't give a shit what your paper said. Economy creeping up out of red as they divvy a shitty little bit of bread. And miles away from that lady's ledge, her senator wake and he's safe and fed. Aide got a paper to read in bed, jerking him off as they count the dead. Mother and baby on razor's edge, they don't give a shit what your paper said. Economy creeping up out of red as they divvy a shitty little bit of bread. And miles away from that lady's ledge, her senator wake and he's safe and fed. Aide got a paper to read in bed, jerking him off as they count the dead. Mother and baby on razor's edge, don't give a shit what your paper said. The economy creeping up out of red as they divvy a shitty little bit of bread. And miles away from that lady's ledge, her senator wake and he's safe and fed. And Aide got a paper to read in bed, jerking him off as they count the dead. Mother and baby on razor's edge, they don't give a shit what your paper said. The economy creeping up out of red as they divvy a shitty little bit of bread. And miles away from that lady's ledge, her senator wake and he's safe and fed. And Aide got a paper to read in bed, jerking him off as they count the dead. False alarm. I thought that help was here. But it was my own reassurance bouncing around 100,000 times in my own ecosphere. If every time you speak you keep it off the record, consequently you can keep your record clear. And if you mute the speech that shakes your frail beliefs, you only seek to insulate your image and continue down the stream in the direction clout and credit steers. Directly from your mouth into Am I the Asshole Reddit's ears. Directly back into the greasy pockets of some Gates Foundation financiers.
And then directly back into the frantic final thoughts of early trial Neuralink volunteers, staring at the numb and mumbling vacancies where recently had been their peers. Half of whom are glitching with the memory stuck on pause, and half have zero fucking clue just who they are or why they're here. It's been said that fear is all we have to fear, but that was back before the basosphere condenser came along, distilling concentrated fear that's diamond pure, crystal clear, oppressor strong, and woven into every single article you read and song they let you hear. And then Elon heard that Jeff enhanced our fears by 86%, and he said, hold my beer. And not a single sheep among the herd would turn their head or say a word, cause they were all too busy begging for the shears, begging for the muzzle, happy just to guzzle, feed, and watch a screen for all their years. Man, to each his own, can't afford a home, but they'll let you have your cozy little ecosphere, where there among your own devices you can break the seventh seal, overthrow the oracles, and slay the seer. All the tomes were burned and all the lips were seared. Shut your eyes and all our lives just disappear. Now blink 'em twice. Welcome to your ecosphere.
We want to have just an off-the-cuff chat between you and me, us. We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Who are these people?
It's us. We're these people.
I love that intro. I love that intro so much.
I'm here with a different co-host this time, Oz LaFave.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me on.
Friend of the show, DJ Joe Nice. How are you, friend?
What's good? And you hear Nick say this all the time. The United States is the most propagandized country in the world.
We are so fucked, you guys. Again, I'm sorry for being cynical, but seriously, we're fucked. We are fucked. We are well and truly fucking fucked.
Just appreciate all the work that you do and the platforms that you all are providing.
Hey, you. Doing good. How are you guys doing?
And as independent media, we have a responsibility to be, we don't hide our bias, obviously, but we must stay true to the facts.
What's up, Pam?
Cheers and salutations. Smoke them if you got them.
But I am here with a man that I've been waiting to talk to for the last couple of years, Nico House.
As an educator, what I would suggest is that, first of all, podcasts like these are made.
So you need to be an example for the people and for the future, knowing that your words can actually change the future.
What do you feel? What would Kwame Ture feel we would have to do?
Well, politics is every day of every minute. You have to be aware of what's going on. Not voting on one day, so the vote has never meant anything. So I'm not a Democrat.
See, I would call that guy the Black Obama.
No. The issues that we talk about, listen to us.
As always, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
In news.
What's up, everybody? Another episode of In News with me, Reef Breland, and Collin Radix-Carter. What's up, fam?
It is Wednesday, my dudes.
It's Wednesday. Another episode.
Oh, that's it?
What?
You're not going to play the full thing?
It is Wednesday, my dudes.
Thank you.
It's the news.
It's the news. Happy Wednesday. Jesus. We're in August already now?
Yep.
Summer's just flying by.
Episode 71. We're at 71 already. You know?
71.
So, yeah, we got some stories this week.
How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. It's hot. It is real hot.
Well, you're in the
Florida. Yeah, it's like,
ugh.
And it's muggy and gross, and my AC's not handling it. But whatever. Anyway, yeah, it's hot.
Yeah.
But how are you
Go in
doing?
the chat out. Yeah, not bad. Well, it's August, so that means I have 2.5 more weeks before I go back to work on the regular like everybody else. I actually went into work today, briefly, because earlier this evening we had a school play date. So basically, we opened our school playground so anyone who is around, especially for new families who are coming in that neighborhood, can stop by and meet teachers who are available and around, just hang out, have a popsicle and all that good stuff, and chat and whatever. So I got to meet some of my pre-K friends. Not sure if they're going to be in my class though, any of the ones I met today, but I met a few of them who at least will be in the grade. So that was fun. And yeah, just you guys have seen some of the mess that's been going down online with me and a couple of other commentators, but we're not going to mention them. You guys know if you follow me
in a van down by the river.
So what?
What?
What? I live in a van down by the river.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You know,
very appropriate for
the
people involved. So yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense for them. But yeah, so we have a few stories that we do want to share. But before we do that, just have to do the plug per usual. Appreciate you guys. Love you guys. Please like, share, subscribe. You guys know we are being suppressed as hell.
So please, whatever.
And we do actually have a challenge for you guys tonight. You know, you don't do this, but we are actually, shout out to you guys, because the last 2 weeks, you guys have been subbing and doing all the things, and we've actually been doing very well, at least especially within the last couple of weeks on that regard. We are 4 subs away from hitting 1,500 subs. So so I know a lot of you typically are families, so you guys are already done all of that. So but for anyone new, if you don't mind subbing to us so we can hit that threshold ideally by tonight, or if we don't hit it by tonight, can you make sure that your friends, your family, whoever, get to know us and subscribe to us?
Get your dog's YouTube account out. Subscribe on that.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Hopefully by the weekend we can hit that. That will be wonderful, and all the things. So that's the first thing. Reef and I, and a few of us at INN, like, we do have a few members. We have 5 people who are extra generous with their money and their time to be members and support us monthly. You know, so we're very grateful to them.
I'm gonna work on a ticker tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll add all of that. But along with that, we are wondering, if you are a member, what incentives would you like to have? It's not to say we're going to do it, but we just want to figure out what will make sense and what you guys want.
Yeah.
As far as a thank you, in terms of you know, subscribing, but also becoming a member. So we are talking about it. So we put in a Q&A in the chat. So if you can let us know, if you were or you are a member, what incentives would you like to see on INN in order for you to become one? So we definitely like some of that input. So, but as usual, please feel welcome to give us super chats. We also should push Patreon as well. We do have a Patreon as well that we don't mention. So
there's a merch store even. You can get some merch there too. It's in the links at indienews.network, or I think you can go to indienews.shop, I think, and should take you there.
We should probably put that in the notes every week too.
It's in the indienews.network. If you go into there, there's the links there.
Right.
So,
but yeah, in any case, obviously, we don't ask for your money. Your presence and your liking and sharing our streams and clips are more than appreciated, and at minimum what we expect, and we appreciate you guys doing that. That being said, as I always say, please take care of your families, take care of yourselves, take care of your communities, as far as financial needs. But if you've taken care of all of that, you have a little bit extra money, you would like to help us out, we'll be more than happy and accepting, and are honored by
Shut up and take my money.
Help us grow. So thank you in advance, and we thank you and we love you. So yeah, are we?
Yeah, we're ready.
Are we ready to do
I
the
think
things? So yeah, we've been actually the two stories that I've pulled. I've been wanting to talk about for the last couple of weeks where we've had guests on. So they've been put on the back burner, but they are important. And so I believe we have mentioned this in past streams, but the Russia-Africa Summit was held last week. We wanted to try and do a summary of that summit. And I think especially what's been happening in Nigeria and Mali that's been reported on the news this week, I think this is a great tie-in to what happened at that summit. So we're going to talk about that first. And I'm kind of shocked that no one has talked about this in mainstream media at all. Well, not mainstream, independent media at all. Those of you who probably know Emmett Till. I know a lot of YouTubers have talked about him, and it's been mentioned before. We've talked about Emmett Till before. He essentially was killed, lynched by a white family, and when he was 14. A lot of people argue that he was actually the catalyst for the civil rights movement. So the mother of the killers, who were her sons, Collin Bryant, passed away this spring. But Biden decided to, well, there will be a monument being erected in his honor. There's obviously mainstream media is going to take it one way.
Yeah.
We're going to approach it in another way that you probably will not hear.
Please don't let it be like that Martin Luther King statue. Please don't let it be dumb and weird.
I think considering this, I think it's mentioned that it's more like a museum of sorts.
Right.
I don't think it's going to be anything as abstract.
Giant open casket, like.
Although I mean that, considering how his mom wanted him to be remembered, I think that would be very poignant.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's going to be anything like that. I should actually look into it more to see what the monument actually will look like. But I think because he was a teen, I think they're going to be a little bit more. I don't want to say respectful, but I don't think they will make it more abstract or anything like that. I highly doubt. So, but all the same, mainstream media is promoting this in one way, but we're going to give another angle to hit this memorial, hence the title Virtual Signaling. So that should give you a hint as to where we go with this. And what do you have, Reef?
Well, I have a story by Jeremy Lafredo over at the Gray Zone. Got to show solidarity with people Mint Press steals from. But, but he's got a story on this Ukraine baby factory, which is despicable to say the least. And kind of a, human rights offense. But we'll get into it and the details on that. And I brought a story from Caitlin Johnstone that I think people kind of need to hear. You may not like it, but you're going to need to hear it, I feel like.
I read it last night, or at least breezed through it. It's kind of lighthearted in a sense.
A little bit.
In a way.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely it's not hard, but I think something that we need right now. But I think depending on your attitude, it can be somewhat
just
hopeful.
kind of refocusing a bit. So I think it'll be good.
So
good
I
to
think
end
in
out
light
with.
of I think it'll be good. So I actually really appreciated you pulling that.
Yeah.
Last night, but
you ready to get started?
I am ready. Actually, we should, because this one's going to be a little long, and so I apologize in advance. I had to Frankenstein this. From Russia with Love. Those of you might know that's a James Bond movie, Sean Connery era. So I've seen mainstream media talk about this summit a little bit, but this is just a lesson that if you are, I think especially for us doing this, and for you at home, if you're reading stuff, in a paper or what you see online, it's always good to read more than one source. Just as a good reminder of that, because I think especially with mainstream media, they're gonna say things in one way in a bias that fits their narrative, and then you're going to have another place that's going to say it from another perspective. So what do I mean by that? So I'm going to show you what I mean by that. Those Russians. So I'm going to first read this article from CBS News, written by Debora Patta, where she reports Russia-Africa summit hosted by Putin draws small crowd, reflecting Africa's changing mood on Moscow. So she reports, if Vladimir Putin was hoping for a big show of support at his Russia-Africa summit, which kicked off last Thursday in St. Petersburg, he has once again been caught on the back foot by his own overweening confidence. Just 17 African heads of state, according to Russia's own tally, showed up for the summit. That's less than half of the 43 leaders who participated in the first Russia-African summit in 2019.
Pause. Why are they already, like, Putin's on the back foot? Right, like, I have read multiple things about this from other publications. None of them thought Putin was on the back foot in any of them.
Right. Right. So, but you kind of hit the point already, but you already see the spin on this, like kind of minimizing, there's just 17 African heads there. Oh, Putin, but it basically makes Putin look like shit. Yeah. Essentially. So already the spin is in. So this is why, so it's long because I'm going to read this from two sources just to give a more balanced idea of what happened at the summit, and we're going to see if they mention anything that was discussed in the summit. You can probably guess the answer to that. But regardless, that's less than half of the 43 leaders who participated in the first Russia-Africa summit in 2019. The list of notable absences included the leaders of several large African nations.
Yeah, the ones we control.
Including including Nigeria's Bola Tinubu and Kenya's William Ruto, as well as Felix Tshisekedi of the Congo, of Rwanda's Paul Kagame. So yes, basically the ones that are
we got hands on.
Yeah, basically yes.
Yeah.
Africa, a continent of 45 nations and 1.3 billion people, has a complicated relationship with the Western world. So, Africa is 54 nations. It's true that Africa harbors lingering suspicions towards former colonizers in Europe and in the UK, and the US African leaders often accuse their Western counterparts of hypocrisy and acting purely in their own selfish interest, of only paying attention to the challenges on this continent when they need to. But any sense that the continent as a whole is leaning towards Russia is mistaken.
You sure? Are you sure about that? Like,
As Putin has become increasingly isolated by sanctions imposed over his war in Ukraine, the Russian leader has tried to use the West's colonial past and its perceived condensation towards Africa to woo the continent. Many African countries share Putin's contempt for US and European economic sanctions, and they've even called on the West to lower its financial weaponry aimed at Moscow. But Russia's decision last week to pull out of an agreement with Ukraine to enable the export of grain and to then bomb Ukrainian ports, destroying thousands of tons of food, enraged countries like Kenya, which lambasted the decision in no uncertain terms as a stab in the back.
Are you sure about that?
Putin has miscalculated the mood on this continent, South African professor William Gamede of Wits University School of Governments told CBS News. Gamede said Putin's decision to pull out of the Black Sea Grain Initiative had strained Russian relationships with countries where food security is often a matter of life and death. The agreement was brokered by the United Nations and Turkey last year to allow the safe passage of agricultural goods from Ukraine's ports through the Black Sea, a region squarely in the crosshairs of Russia's invasion. While the vast majority of the nearly 33 million tons of grain exported since the deal was reached a year ago never actually reached the world's poorest countries, the deal did help bring down reverse spiraling food prices by more than 20%, according to the UN. Even if countries can afford to buy grain, Russia's decision has a massive impact on inflation, some Gamede. Speaking at the summit on Thursday, Putin said Russia was ready to supply 6 African countries with between 25,000 and 50,000 tons of grain free of charge. We will also provide free delivery of these products to consumers, he said. Putin again accused Western countries of obstructing the supply of Russian grain and fertilizers, repeating his government's longstanding complaint that the US and its allies weren't keeping up their end of the bargain under the grain deal, while hypocritically accusing us of the current crisis situation in the global food market.
That's because it's you.
Gamede dismissed Putin's remarks as a cynical announcement and told CBS News it was, at best, only made to stem rising criticism of Russia's withdrawal from the grain deal by African leaders.
So he thinks it was to make people upset with him? That's what he thinks? You fucking idiot. Why would anyone do that? What? Who thinks I should fuck myself over? No one thinks that. What the fuck?
So if you can zoom out for a second.
Yeah.
So obviously you could see the spin already. All right.
Yep.
So friend of the show, who actually is in Moscow, Fiorella Isabel, she tweeted out, because she's been following this. She says, Western media headlines on the Russian-African summit say it was a failure. Meanwhile, delegations from 49 out of 55 countries in Africa show up.
Yep.
So very different from the, how many, 17? CBS News said. Russia will give free grain to African nations in need within months. Didn't mention that whole thing. African leaders remind Putin of their historic relationship going back to the Soviet Union, with Roman Lumumba, director of the Patrice Emery Lumumba Foundation, saying Russia treats Africa as equals. BRICS nations expand on de-dollarization. We've talked about that here. African leaders ask Russia for aid in ousting foreign intervention, one being Libya. Summit ends with adoption of a 74-point document outlining the key areas of cooperation with Moscow, from trade and security to nuclear energy and climate change. Additionally, Vladimir Putin announced a 12.2 billion ruble,
1.2 billion ruble,
around $13 million investment in African healthcare systems, and pledged between 25,000 to 50,000 tons of grain for Burkina Faso, Zimbabwe, Mali, Somalia, the Central African Republic, and Eritrea.
Please, Faye, come on.
So just wanted to show you this real quick. I just pulled this out real fast. These were headlines from articles that I found that that basically say Africa shun Putin. Putin says African initiative could be basis for peace in Ukraine. Russian Africa summit, Putin offers unconvincing giveaways in a desperate bid to make up for killing the Ukraine grain deal. U.S. takes aim at Kremlin over Russia Africa summit. No meaningful commitments.
BigMadCrab in the chat said the entire grain deal is because Ukraine blew up Crimea. This is because of the bridge. All Putin did was, you're gonna fuck up my infrastructure on the day of grain deal renewal. Fuck you then.
Right.
Yeah.
So this was our version of the summit. Now let's go to another article written from RT. We don't use them a lot, but I think given the context, I think it makes sense. Since this took place in Russia, we should hear the Russian perspective.
Our friends, the Russians.
Right? So, so they say, this is written by the editorial board, I believe. U.S. and U.K. media pour scorn on Russia-Africa summit. Coverage of the St. Petersburg meeting appeared to follow cherry-picking talking points. So they just basically go right in.
Yeah.
British and American outlets have embraced...
Hold on. I gotta fix it. There we go.
Okay, thank you. British and American outlets have embraced a set of similar talking points in their coverage of the Russia-Africa summit taking place last week in St. Petersburg, focusing on the number of presidents in attendance, blaming Moscow for the demise of the Black Sea grain deal, and bringing up the presence of Wagner on the continent. A total of 49 African countries sent officials to the two-day summit, which ended with a 74-point joint declaration pledging cooperation with developing a multipolar world order. Western outlets, however, chose to focus on the number of presidents in attendance, and a quote by Kenyan diplomat Kori Singh Olei, who tweeted last week that calling off the grain deal was a stab on the back at global food security prices.
Joint declarations are the best kind of declarations, but I digress.
Russia decided not to extend the year-long arrangement that allowed Ukraine to export 33 million tons of grain, mainly to the EU, Turkey, and China, with only a tiny amount reaching Africa, because the UN never enabled the export of Russian grain and fertilizer, which were blocked by Western shipping sanctions.
Yep.
Kremlin seethes over poor summit turnout, CNN declared in a headline, echoing the just 17 talking point. There was nothing to corroborate the claiming of seething. However, only another assertion further down that the Kremlin fumed over the poor turnout when referring to Western pressure on the continent's leaders. And the idea that Africa as a whole leans towards Russia is clearly mistaken, argued Washington Post columnist Adam Taylor, using votes in the UN General Assembly as its metric. Taylor also brought up less than half of 43, the grain deal, and Singh Olei, I guess that's how you say it, sorry. Newsweek also echoes the 1743 difference, though it noted that 32 more countries were represented by officials or ambassadors. So,
yep.
I mean, what's the difference?
Uh-huh.
Again, so just our way of kind of downplaying, like presidents or leaders of African countries.
Right. Like if we sent the chief of staff or the secretary of state, that would be us showing up. You know. So
their headline, however, focused on mockery of President Vladimir Putin's handshake with the Ethiopian Prime Minister by the Polish-based Telegram channel Nexta, which promotes Ukrainian narratives and regime change in Belarus.
Putin's a madman.
Time had a more ambitious headline, Why African Leaders Are Staying Away from Putin's Russian Africa Summit, but instead of delivering on the clam, provided the same talking points. Grain deal, Singh Olei, Wagner.
I think that means plain. RT, you put clam. You know? It's their fault.
Boisted by quotes from Western think tanks. Putin left red-faced as few African leaders turn up to his Russia summit, claimed HuffPo, a surviving subsidiary of BuzzFeed. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, they've just really.
Oh yeah, they went bankrupt. They're not a thing anymore. HuffPo still lives. So...
They too went with the 1743, the grain deal, and a quote by Singh, Olehi, and Wagner, but also chose to highlight that 49 African leaders showed up at U.S. President Joe Biden's summit last December. HuffPo also attributed the phrase, "It seemed the novelty has worn off," to the Russian outlet Kommersant, though it was in fact a bit of editorializing from a tweet by BBC correspondent Steve Rosenberg. The British press also checked off the talking points. 17, grain deal, stab in the back, Wagner, Kremlin banks threats for some other leaders due to
the walls are closing in. Yep.
Proclaim the Guardian, also bringing up Biden's December summit as a comparison.
Which I'm betting they counted every ambassador and whatever for that. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Fresh humiliation for Putin as he faces poor turnout by African leaders was the Daily Mail's headline of choice, even as they admitted 32 more countries were represented at some level. Right. So, tweet from Going Underground, they say, birth of a multipolar world, the Russia-African summit begins today in St. Petersburg. Of course, this was last week. Despite enormous pressure from the US and EU on African countries to not attend, so that wasn't mentioned in any of the Western press, that they were discouraging African nations not to go. 49 out of 54 African countries are attending the conference. Today, Africa is asserting itself more confidently as one of the poles of the emerging multipolar world. Putin.
Putin. I like that. I like that text logo under there. That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Or you can barely read Russia. You should have got rid of that white, and I guess it's Russian flag though. You know,
it's a Russian flag. Yeah, but that blue is not their shade of blue though.
This side works. Like this side, it's hard to read that R. Just saying, whoever did the graphics on that, you could have I don't know, put an outline or something would have helped. Literally, I think just an outline on that would have made it. Anyway, sorry, I get distracted.
No, you got squirrel moment, but
yeah.
But I mean, so I wanted to do that just as a reminder to our folks at home. It's important, and again, you learn this in school. If you use one source, use another. Ideally, try and get sources from the people that it affects.
Yep.
I don't think we necessarily do a good job of that, and I think especially it's a lot harder to get news articles, international ones at least are a little more, less biased. But I think it's good practice anyway, and we try and do that here. We probably should do more of that, honestly, but But if anything, we try and use more independent sources besides the mainstream ones. But, as I said, always good to try and get the perspective of the people who are there, just to give a more balanced
So you brought
view.
Al Jazeera, right?
I did also bring Al Jazeera. Again, I just want to cover all bases.
All bases. All your bases belong to us.
Right. So, but this goes into a little more specifics in terms of what was spoken at the summit, which neither one or RT or even that CBS article mentioned, really. So RT did a little bit. This goes in a little bit more depth. So that's why I wanted to pull this as well. So Putin promises grains debt write-off as Russia seeks Africa allies. Putin pledges to supply Africa with grain, promotes joint fight against neocolonialism during Russia-Africa summit.
Okay.
Oops, wait.
There you go.
There we go. Russian President Vladimir Putin says his country and the African leaders attended a summit in St. Petersburg have agreed to promote a multipolar world order and fight neocolonialism as he offered death write-offs and grain to allies. Notice how they didn't say wanted to fight neocolonialism in the West. Gee, I wonder why. Russia's attention to Africa is steadily growing, Putin said on Friday at the end of the two-day summit. The meeting was seen as a test of Moscow's support in Africa, where Russia retains backing despite international isolation sparked by its war in Ukraine. Last Thursday, the Russian leader promised free grain to 6 African nations and assured them that Moscow was trying to avert a global food crisis nearly a week after withdrawing from an agreement that allowed Ukraine, one of the world's largest grain producers, to export its farm products across the Black Sea. The Russian leader also mentioned the joint determination to counter neocolonialism, the practice of applying legitimate sanctions, and attempts to undermine traditional moral values. Representatives of 49 countries, including 17 heads of state, attended the summit in the Russian city. Participants signed a joint declaration that called for the establishment of a more just, balanced, and stable multipolar world order, firmly opposing all types of international confrontation in the African continent. Al Jazeera's Ali Shahim, reporting from St. Petersburg, said the declaration is Russia's new initiative towards Africa. There is a Russian plan for Africa, he said, adding that there are very ambitious initiatives from Putin. Russia wants to gain Africa allies. This is why it's initiating more and more towards Africa, to the extent that President Putin wants to revive the social era investments in Africa, he said. And actually, Reef actually showed me a cartoon a couple of weeks ago. It was done in the 60s, I believe, that kind of in its way kind of speaks into this, or at least kind of speaks from
anti-capitalist African sentiment from Russian cartoonists. You know,
we should probably do a reaction to that. Actually,
yeah, we should do that.
A good segment. But yeah, but I digress. According to Hashim, Russia plans on building plants and factories and increasing diplomatic missions on the continent. Putin is also promising to maintain grain supplies to Africa after he withdrew from the Black Sea grain deal. He is blaming the West for higher food prices and inflation and said the global economic system is going through significant change. Africa is the new center of power. Its political and economic role is growing exponentially. Everyone will have to take this reality into account, he said. For several years, the Kremlin has openly engaged in diplomatic and economic offenses on the continent and offered security services in the form of the Wagner mercenary army to African governments fending off armed groups. But in recent months, Russia has had to step up its quest for alternatives to European partners. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, what's that?
Sergei Lavrov.
Has toured Africa twice since January, seek to draw it into Moscow's camp and presenting Russia as a bulwark against Western imperialism and neocolonialism. African leaders pressed Putin to move ahead with their peace plan to end the Ukraine conflict. Didn't hear that in Western press either.
No.
While not directly critical of Russia, their interventions on the second day of the summit were more concerted and forceful than those that African countries have voiced previously. They served as reminders of the depth of African concern at the consequences of the war, especially rising food prices. This war must end, and it can only end on the basis of justice and reason, African Communion Commission Chairman Musa Faki Mahamat told Putin and African leaders at the summit. That was easy to read, and I couldn't read it. The disruptions of energy and grain supplies must end immediately. The grain deal must be extended for the benefit of all the peoples of the world, Africans in particular. Republic of the Congo President Denis Sassou Nguesso said the African initiative deserves the closest attention, as he called urgency for peace. Senegalese President Macky Sall saw a de-escalation to help create calm, while South African President Cyril Ramaphosa said he hoped that constructive engagement and negotiation could help end the conflict. The summit took place in the wake of the Russian withdrawal from the grain deal. The suspension of the deal, which had helped to stabilize global food prices and avert shortages, increased fears of a global food crisis. Putin reiterated that Russia would continue to supply African friends with grain crops both on a contractual basis and free of charge. Putin added the leaders had agreed to improve cooperation on aid, energy, and trade, including by consistently switching to national currencies for commercial transactions. The Russian leader also pledged to wipe out the debts of Africa. Many of the leaders had warm words for Moscow's record of support for their countries in their 20th century liberation struggles, and the final declaration promised Russia would help them seek compensation for the damage done by colonial rule and secure the restoration of plundered cultural treasures. The leaders of Mali and the Central African Republic, whose governments have relied heavily on the services of Russia's Wagner Group, both expressed gratitude to Putin. President Faustin Archange Tudera said Central African Republic's relations with Russia had helped save its democracy and avoid a civil war. He thanked Russia for helping us to impose foreign hegemony.
Well, sounds like Russia ain't doing as bad in Africa as we would like of us to believe.
Right. And as I said, I felt it was very important to read different sources. So obviously it made it for slightly longer, actually not that long of a segment, but I think it's just important because this is, and talking with people online, especially with this deal with Russia, Ukraine, it's very easy to see why people are just kind of fixated on our stance in Ukraine. And again, we say this all the time. It's not to say Putin is a good guy, like there's that thing called nuance that people have to understand, that people have to look on. Like, if you want us to have nuance in regards to Ukraine, then we should have nuance in terms of how we view Russia as well. So, and again, a lot of the stuff that was written in Al Jazeera, we weren't hearing, and of course they're not going to hear it because it doesn't benefit the West. That many African countries are now shifting their focus to Russia, given that Russia is actually giving them stuff in support, kind of similar to China, what it's doing.
Yeah. Well, and military aid and classic. Well, it's essentially what we've been trying to do for years. They're just actually doing it better. They're not leaving a ton of bases and a ton of military and a ton of they're not doing that. So, we've extended our empire to, I think it was, who was it in the chat? U.S. refuses, go start. U.S. refuses to withdraw 1,100 troops from Niger. Right? Like, we're just leaving them there. So that doesn't make, that would make me, if a foreign entity's military was just hanging out in my backyard, I'd be a little tentative,
Right.
And you see Niger and Nigeria are all button heads, and you see essentially the ones we control are now trying to, throw stones. So, we'll see. But I saw recently that work's going to start on a inter-African, highway system. Which that's going to be a big deal. And especially if the Russians and Chinese are willing to help with that infrastructure building, that's going to be a problem for us. Right. It means we might not get the resources we've been stealing forever. So it might go to elsewhere in Africa.
Right. So there are two things that I want to talk about before we kind of end this segment. The first thing is, I'm kind of concerned about what this many of these countries in Africa and now working somewhat in solidarity with Russia and China. Well, China's been the thing, but now Russia. It does concern me how the West is going to retaliate, especially given that, again, Putin has promised food, Putin has promised rebuilding, the health infrastructure in many countries. I'm sure there might be more on the pipeline that, wasn't necessarily mentioned here or will be discussed in the future. It just concerns, especially given that we have all these military bases on the continent, that it does concern me especially with Ukraine, like it just gives me more place to worry in terms of ramping up more of a civil war among countries in a way, or if not an outright world war where Africa will almost kind of be in the middle of the fight, So that's kind of my concern right now. I can argue that many of these countries are looking to Russia and China essentially for protection because, they have the nukes, So, but my concern is obviously that working class people, normal people are going to be affected, in whatever conflict that might arise out of this, especially given some of the African countries that do are basically establishment dogs for the West. So that's first concern. Second concern, and I've said this on the show many times, is it good for Putin to supply tangible needs? Sure. You can make that. Yeah. Would I prefer that?
There was a leader recently. I saw a video that talked about literally saying what you're about to say now, of like this is like I think he made the claim of like it was a lot of African leaders travel the world to beg, right? Like that sort of thing, where it's like we shouldn't be doing that. We should be making our own, way in the world. Like so that sentiment is out there.
That's basically what I wanted to say. Those of you who have watched the show for a while, and I probably should have him on again at some point. My one of my mentors in Rwanda, Ronnie, he mentioned this. In terms of Africans are not looking for handouts. Like Africans want the option, preferably, as we say, seize the means of production. They need help in developing the infrastructure so that they're able to do it on their own.
Which if those roads are gonna fucking be built, man, prep for a bumpy ride here, because the fucking the
Russians don't take a dump, son, without a plan.
I mean, they got moves. They're making money moves over there right now. So,
my hope is, I think considering the circumstances, it's a good thing for Putin to supply aid in this way. However, I would also hope that a lot of African countries refer to back in the days of the Soviet Union when they're more communist, the relationship with Russia at that time. Putin is not that guy per se. He is not. Well, Reef and I can make probably more socialist than many of our leaders here for sure, but he still kind of works within a capitalistic mindset, I would argue. But I hope that this can be the catalyst for African nations to develop their own infrastructure so that they don't need to be dependent on Russia. They don't need to be dependent on China. They don't need to be dependent on the West to supply them with really, at this point, basic needs. So the idea right now, the infrastructure is just not there on the continent right now. And, I agree. It's the idea of like, I don't want to see Africans be seen as the beggars or the continent where we have to help these poor people. Like, I don't want to have that mindset. And I think that mindset is still kind of perpetuated, definitely in the West. I don't want that mindset to be perpetuated, Russia, given that ideological system now. If this were back many years ago, that would be one thing. So I hope that Putin or whoever is able to kind of bring them up into that socialist mindset, communist mindset of being able to supply for their own needs, so Africa can be a powerhouse in of its own right.
If we got
what
time,
Libya could have been before we essentially fucked them over.
Yeah.
So
if we've got time at the end of the show, I might tell Fanto to have another 5th clip of that cartoon. We might react to that at the end of the stream. So, well, it's only 15 minutes. I think if we get through the rest of these pretty quick,
yeah,
we can get to it. I also found another one if we want to do that. That's about Africa from the 30s. So we'll see how that one goes.
I think the one you showed me, I think is more relevant to this. So I think we could probably try and do that. If not tonight, then maybe in the extra segment that we can show.
Whatever.
But I think either way, I think honestly, like, just to kind of get that, I think it's good for you guys to see it. So
shout out to Kit in the chat saying hit the like button, reminding you to do so. So
cheers and salutations. Smoke 'em if you got 'em.
Appreciate you, fam.
Actually, I'm just doing an update, so if you give me a second,
go start your morning righteously angry with Hardlands Media. Kit in the morning, giving you some stuff to be mad about. So, go check them out.
Let's see. So we're at 1497. So nice. Three more subs.
Get 3 more people here. You can do that.
So get new people here, however you want to do it, and ask them to sub. Thank you.
We'll do it live.
We'll do it live.
We'll do it live. On to our next story. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, everyone's favorite NATO money laundering scheme. So this is an article by Gray Zone's own Jeremy Lafredo, the old Alfredo boy. We love him. Ukraine's baby factories rake in record profits amid chaos of war. So you're wondering what a baby factory might be. We'll get into it.
Yeah.
So while average Ukrainians suffer amid NATO's proxy war against Russia, business is booming for the surrogate baby industry, which requires a steady supply of healthy and financially desperate women willing to lease their wombs to affluent foreigners.
Oh, God.
Yep. So surrogates have to be from poorer places than our clients, explained the medical director of Kyiv's largest baby factory. Okay, so Ihor Pechnoha of the Swiss-based Biotexcom, which that sounds like a fucking company on a Blade Runner. I swear to God, y'all need to stop naming companies dystopian shit. All right? Figure that shit out. We do not need fucking Viacom. All right? We don't need that shit. It fucking sounds like an evil company to begin with. Biotexcom. Like, that's like Resident Evil company. You might as well call it Umbrella. Says the business model that enabled him to build one of the most profitable surrogacy companies in the world is simple exploitation. Quote, we are looking for women in the former Soviet republics because, logically, the women have to be from poorer places than our clients. God, that sounds fucked up. So,
it is.
Friend of the show, Max Blumenthal, Swiss-based surrogacy company Biotexcom, is cashing in on the financial desperation of Ukrainian women while receiving protection from Kyiv and the West. Baby farming is so lucrative, the company has built bomb shelters for local women, leasing their wombs to affluent foreigners. You want to see some of those, Collin? See how terrible these? Yep, we're gonna have to.
Tell me anyway.
Yep. Buckle in, buckos.
Now I will show you our bomb shelter, where we will transfer our clients and their newborns in case of the outbreak of hostilities in Kiev. Let's go. Here is a toilet. Here we have a first aid kit. There are all the medications needed to administer first aid. Here you can see gas masks. There are instructions on how to use a gas mask all over the shelter. This bomb shelter can hold up to 200 people who will feel comfortable here.
Would you and 199 other people feel comfortable in that space?
200 pregnant women.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. Someone's gonna get ripped apart in there. Is Jesus Christ. Fucking.
Here is our sitting and bedding zone. There are sleeping bags and beds. It's possible to sit
This is for pregnant women, mind.
or lie here. We have enough sleeping bags and gas masks for everyone who will stay here. There are shelvings with food, as well as tableware, napkins, diapers, and all the stuff needed for babies. Newborns will feel comfortable here. Everything needed can be done here. Here is our children's area. Here we can place newborn babies. There are special cots prepared for them. There are also cribs for a bit older babies. You can see that babies feel absolutely comfortable here. We have everything needed: diapers, cribs, blankets, clothes, food, everything needed.
What the fuck is this?
Uh-huh. Like, holy shit, dude.
What the fuck?
Like, Jesus Christ. No, I don't want to watch it again. So, it gets worser. It is no surprise that the biotech's quest for rentable wombs has led it to the seemingly endless pool of desperate young women in war-torn Ukraine. 8 years of civil conflict combined with the subsequent proxy war between NATO and Russia has plunged Ukraine into economic disaster. As Ukrainians sank into poverty, their country swiftly emerged as their international capital of the surrogacy industry. Today, Ukraine controls at least a quarter of the global market. Despite being home to fewer than 1% of the world's population, alongside the industry's rise, a seedy medical underworld filled with patient abuse and corruption took hold of the country. Gee, I wonder why. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and his team have actively encouraged the West to plunder their war-torn country, inking an investment partnership with the global asset management firm BlackRock, stripping workers of labor productions and handing state-owned companies over to private firms. What is that called, Collin? Like, what happens when government and business start working actively together? There's a word for that.
Starts with an F.
That's it. You're on it. Ism.
And ism.
Yeah, there you go. Himbo's on it. Himbo's with us. So Ukrainian we read that. So yet Ukraine's surrogacy industry has fallen under the radar despite pumping over $1.5 billion fucking dollars into the country's economy in 2018 alone. Since then, the global market for surrogate babies has more than doubled. The industry was valued at over $14 billion in 2022 and is projected to grow by around 25% annually in coming years, according to analysts by Global Market Insights. Oh.
Just as an aside, it kind of freaks me out a little bit because I think I said to you guys I was at an event at my school today, and there was a family that I worked with. What year was this? 2020 to 2021 school year. So I taught their son that year. He's now in second grade. Didn't know that they had another kid since then. And so I saw this little kid and I was like,
when this happened? Like
exactly. Like,
yeah.
And she explained to me she had him by a surrogate. So so that explained why I didn't. Well, I never really saw it at school anyway. But like, you know, but she explained. So that explained why I didn't see when I did see her. She wasn't pregnant or anything else. So, so this story is kind of a little jarring considering, you know, like I know, like you're sharing.
Well, we'll get into the foreign surrogacy stuff in a bit. It's already been a problem. So, as nations like India and Nepal slam the door on surrogacy companies, citing concerns the industry drives human trafficking. We're right on time. Western officials appear to be turning a blind eye to the abuse-ridden business flourishing in deregulated, politically unstable Ukraine. Emma Lamberton is a Master of International Development candidate at the University of Pittsburgh. Recently, she published a paper in Princeton's Journal of Public and International Affairs detailing the risks Ukrainian women face when participating in the country's surrogacy industry. Look at that. Look at that. You see that? Fucking Princeton. Even the smart people and the rich people, I should say.
I mean, it's it's the elites. It's all elites at the end of the day. I mean, this is nothing new to us. Often the elites who say that they're the progressive ones are the ones that are doing the fuckery. And they have the means, especially with Princeton, like, you know, Princeton has money, old money. So they can influence government really to do whatever they want.
Whatever they want. Yep. So Dr. Nick Riviera in chat, I gave $2. You get $5. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dr.
You know, appreciate you. So the main concern of advocates on the ground in Ukraine is that legislators and even news organizations aren't looking at this as a human rights violation, Lamberton told the Gray Zone. So a government would never see human rights violations like child abuse as something to simply be regulated, she explained. They never say you should only be able to beat your children on Wednesdays.
It is Wednesday, my dudes.
That would be incredibly ridiculous. And so, from the perspective of advocates on the ground in Ukraine, this is an abuse issue, and therefore it should not be regulated and instead should be outlawed. Long before the February 2022 escalation of hostilities in Ukraine, the country was known as a fertile hunting ground for shady characters and agencies seeking to prey on desperate Ukrainian women. Asian nations with weak regulatory systems and masses of impoverished citizens like India, Thailand, and Nepal also provided popular surrogacy markets, but their government could not ignore the mounting record of human rights abuses by top industry players and ultimately closed their doors to wealthy foreigner-seeking surrogates. Good for them. The restriction of these national surrogate markets has channeled global demand to Ukraine and kicked off a race to the bottom among child vending firms. Now, childbirth profiteers have effectively exported the industry from impoverished nations to one in the midst of a grinding military confrontation with its neighbors. The war has brought to the forefront the need for unified international regulations on the topic of surrogacy, as surrogates are currently forced to choose between staying in a war zone or fleeing to neighboring countries that don't recognize the legality of surrogacy, Lamberton noted to the Gray Zone. As with any humanitarian crisis, human trafficking becomes an even greater risk, she said. An international agreement on surrogacy and human rights violations are needed to protect the vulnerable women and children in Ukraine. The Biotexcom Center for Reproduction is by far the biggest player in the international surrogacy market. The owner of the reproductive technology services provider claimed that in 2018, the company controlled a massive 70% of the national surrogacy market and a full 25% of the global market, which we mentioned earlier. While Biotechcom's website boasts that the company has given the joy of parenthood to thousands of couples around the world, its true history and operations reveal a gut-wrenching pattern of abuse, secrecy, malpractice, and even allegations of human trafficking. In a 2018 interview with Al Jazeera, a Ukrainian woman named Alina described the conditions that led her to entering a contractual pregnancy agreement with Biotexcom. She says, go ahead.
No, I'm interested. We could probably guess, but it'll be interesting to see what she said.
It's hard to find a well-paid job in Ukraine. I wanted to set aside money for my son's university fees. They're very expensive, she said. One Ukrainian Biotexcom surrogate mother carrying a child for an American couple told El País that she decided to sell her womb due to financial strain. I grew up without a home. It's important for me to have an apartment of my own. Surrogacy is the only way I can do that.
Pause.
Yes.
So we're giving all this. So again, think about this. We're giving all this money to Ukraine, right? Allegedly, this money, and we talked about this before. Like, the Gray Zone did an independent audit on this. You can find that in our clips playlist. This money allegedly is claimed to go to the people of Ukraine.
Yep.
It's not.
No.
This would be not this. Like, people are saying, "Oh, we need to support the people in Ukraine." You know what? I'd be down for that.
Yeah. Where?
I mean, but I'll be down. Like, I mean, aside, like, you gotta help ourselves first before you give money to other countries. But even if you want to make that argument and kind of say,
you stop sending military aid.
Like, this is not what I want to put my taxes for.
No.
I mean, the money is there. If we can save the banks, then we can save the world.
Greta, just relax. It's gonna be all right. But yeah, this is just, it's fucking Dr. Evil could make a better plan.
Right.
So Biotexcom's medical director, Ihor Pechnoha, which we talked about a minute ago, openly admitted to the Spanish investigative magazine La Marea that his company targets women from poor areas and that, quote, all those who work as surrogate mothers do so out of financial hardship.
Of course. It's class. Women with opportunities don't need to worry about doing shit like this.
Yep. We are looking for women in the former Soviet republics because, logically, the women have to be from poorer places than our clients, Pechnoha explained. Ultimately, he added...
No, it's because you're putting them in positions where they don't have a choice.
Ultimately,
they have no option.
Right.
So, yeah.
He continues, I have not met a single woman with a good economic situation who has decided to go through this process out of kindness because she thinks she has enough children and wants to help someone else who wants them. Yeah, why do you think? Like, this is... Anyway, they do it because they need that money to buy a house for the education of their children, Pechno continued, concluding, if you had a good life in Europe, you're not going to do it. A third Ukrainian woman who sold her womb to foreigners confirmed Pechno's comments in an interview with The Guardian, explaining, the only reason why I agreed to do this is just for the financial benefits. Plus, since my husband left for the front line, I need a way to support my other 4 children.
Jesus
she added.
Christ.
Surrogate mothers, they're a flow of incubators. Yet another one of Biotexcom's surrogates explained in 2019, they don't treat you as a human being. A 2020 report published in Princeton's Journal of Public and International Affairs further underscored the foreign exploitation driving Ukraine's surrogacy boom, asserting, while proponents claim that women freely choose to become surrogates, vulnerable women are often manipulated through the presentation of choice. Potential surrogates are forced to choose between providing for their families through a practice that may violate their moral beliefs or forfeiting a financial opportunity or their own health to provide for their families. Collin, women still die of childbirth. That's still a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and I can't imagine this org doesn't necessarily have the right medical staff. Like that are able to ensure that all these, especially since it's a factory. It's literally a factory.
Yep.
I doubt that many of these women. It'll be interesting to see if Jeremy continues or follows this story. Like, how many women, not even exploited, but how many women have died or gotten sick, or even the children, like once they're born, have gotten sick just due to that place is a shelter. It's not a comfortable place, and again, like 200 pregnant women in that one shelter, like that's not comfortable.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a lot of malnutrition, poor health. I'm sure once the baby is born, they're going to give the priority to the kids, because it's Western families who it's their kids essentially. So they want to make sure those babies are generally okay. But these mothers, and then after that, like I have to wonder, like, is the payoff worth it? Like for these women to do it? Like, are they able? I mean, I can't fathom that. Even if they do, I can't fathom that they feel good.
Yeah.
Necessarily, some might, but
it might be better than what they're in. Which is again speaks to the financial shit.
Right, but again, it's right, but it speaks to the idea of like, why are we giving money to Ukraine if it's not going to the people that it claims that it's supposed to be helping? That's what is being reported in the news.
Yeah.
It's supposed to help you, like the common man in Ukraine, when obviously it's not. And as we reported, Fire the Great Sun is going to corporations that not even connected in Ukraine.
Yep.
We're fucked.
So, Oksana Beloser, a Ukrainian MP pushing to ban foreigners from leasing Ukrainian wombs, told the Australian Broadcast Corporation that there are two categories of Ukrainian surrogates: those wanting to do it for the money and those who already have. She insisted to ABC that surrogacy offers so much economic value to Ukraine that it may be impossible to outlaw.
Oh, this bitch.
Beloser lamented that corrupt oligarchic forces entrenched within the Ukrainian government have already stymied her legislative battle with the surrogacy industry. Really, it's now a big fight with business and their lobbyists who are unfortunately present in the parliament, she said. Surrogacy was written into our laws purely as a business. Emma Lamberton, the author of the Princeton Report we talked about earlier, Ukraine's surrogacy industry, noted Biotexcom is actually a foreign company operating inside of Ukraine. Documents from the firm's website suggest the company is registered in Switzerland.
Just 1 second. Jilly Love 101 in the chat made a good point. Rich Ukrainians aren't in Ukraine.
Yeah, they're all left. Here. They're out. Yeah. So
they're in Europe or here. So
despite Biotexcom's association with the wealthy banking center and a bevy of promotional material flaunting its state-of-the-art facilities and luxury accommodations for surrogate mothers, multiple reports indicate its residential centers are more akin to a prison than any four-star, or for that matter, low-budget hotel. One mother explained that while under contract with Biotexcom, through the company put her up in an apartment as promised, she was forced to share it with 4 other pregnant surrogates. She even described having to share a bed for 32 weeks. 32 weeks of her pregnancy.
So basically the whole pregnancy.
Yes. You had to share a fucking bed. Are you fucking... Others who have witnessed the company's practices from the inside say it weaponizes the surrogates' financial desperation to essentially imprison them. Yeah, if we weren't home after 4 p.m., we could be fined 100 fucking euros. By 4 p.m., you got to be home at 4 p.m. or they will take 100 euros from you as a pregnant woman who's had to fucking be in bed with some other pregnant woman for 32 fucking weeks of your... A former Biotexcom surrogate told London-based freelance journalist Madeline Rush, on average, the monthly stipend for surrogates ranges from 200 to 350 euros. In other words, leaving the living quarters could cost a Biotexcom surrogate half of their monthly compensation. We were also...
I just want to check... I want to do the... So keep going. Just want to check.
We were also threatened with a fine, and any of us openly criticized the company or directly communicated with the biological parents. She said, we were treated like cattle and mocked by the doctors. The financial compensation, she said, was not nearly enough to make her decision worthwhile. I would never be a surrogate mother again. It was a terrible experience. After birth...
Just to give it... Hold on. So just an idea. So 300 euros is about $330.
Dollars is pretty close.
A month.
Do you remember the Nazis had these too? Nazis had baby factories too. Just Jilly Love wants to remind people that happened. Hitler's youth was a thing. So, after birth, many infants are kept under lock and key in hotels with militarized security until their purchasers arrive to collect them. The Guardian described the dystopian process in 2020. These newborns are not in the nursery of a maternity hospital. Right. They are lined up side by side in 2 large reception rooms of the improbably named Hotel Venice on the outskirts of Kyiv, protected by outer walls and barbed wire. Meanwhile, top Ukrainian officials allege the abusive industry has found powerful guardians in Washington. Oh, who would have thought?
Of course.
Former Ukrainian state prosecutor Yuri Lutsenko oversees a series of criminal investigations into Biotexcom for fraud and human trafficking. In 2018, ordered the company's founder, a German scientist named Albert Tochlovsky, to be placed under house arrest for 2 months. Yet, Lutsenko was promptly removed from his post. In the aftermath of his firing, Lutsenko told The Hill that U.S. ambassador to Kyiv, Maria Yovanovitch, once handed him a untouchables list, a docket of powerful people whom Washington forbade him from investigating or prosecuting. Through the exact names that appeared on the list remain unknown, Lutsenko later told The Guardian that he believes the investigations into Biotexcom have stalled as a result of his dismissal, while Ukraine's former top prosecutor all but accused the U.S. of protecting Biotexcom's founder. Top Western outlets produced glowing public relations-like coverage of the company, papering over the abuse and exploitation lurking behind its maternity ward curtains. In October of 2022, the New York Times published an article that could have been drawn directly from Biotexcom's marketing material. The Times framed the resumption of Biotexcom surrogacy operations in the midst of war-torn Ukraine as a valiant act of patriotic defiance, describing the baby business as an industry that many childless people rely on. Instead of questioning Biotexcom's medical director on the business model that relies on the financial coercion of poor women or reports of mistreatment, the Times tossed Pichnoha easy questions about surrogacy. The war has not diminished the appeal of surrogacy for couples desperate to have children, Pichnoha explained, because the company's clients are in a hurry. We managed to bring all our surrogate mothers out from under occupation and shelling, he added. Apparently not when you're putting it in bomb shelters. As the Ukrainian proxy war began, the lucrative business of supplying foreign women with babies at the expense of poor Ukrainian women adopted a militarized posture. According to The Atlantic, the company even secured a bomb shelter, which we looked at a minute ago, to ensure that newborn production can continue unimpeded in the event of an attack A video published by Biotech.com in early 2022 showed a typical shelter equipped not only with beds and sleeping bags, but cribs and gas masks as well. A primetime promotional-style ABC News package on the company celebrated its Russia bomb-proof factories, declaring, Ukrainian surrogacy agency does whatever it takes to keep patients safe. The report opened with ABC's David Moyer commending Ukraine's largest surrogacy agency for taking all measures possible to make sure their patients and their babies are safe. The segment featured a softball interview in which Biotech.com medical director, insisted without a scintilla of pushback that the company's medical standards were too high. So high. Muir then commended him for being courageous and brave and working for such a wonderful company. Biotech.com clearly treats some of humanity's most daunting challenges as business opportunities, from war to the supposedly looming threat of depopulation. I've never heard of that threat, Collin. I've only heard the opposite.
Right.
From war to the looming threat of depopulation, Biotech.com's views humanity's most daunting challenges is, but we read that, right? In a note accompanying an article promoted by the company, Biotech.com highlighted declining birth rates in developing countries to argue that their artificial insemination technology is a chance for survival for humankind. This is where it gets fucking crazy. So, in 50 years, the population of most countries of the world will be reduced by half, the piece declared, which I've, again, only heard the opposite. Tochlovsky, the German owner of Biotech.com, has argued that
unless we're thinking that we do go into a nuclear war within the next...
That's also possible, but they're also trying to make it to where it's developing countries. So UK, US, that kind of stuff. People are having less children, mainly because they can't afford to have it. Right?
Right.
So Tochlovsky, the German owner of Biotech.com, has argued that as long as his company remains at the forefront of the wider biotech industry, it promises to deliver a future in reproductive biotechnology where babies are generated in artificial wombs and genes are edited with computers.
I mean, I'm not surprised at that.
Neither am I.
I've seen an artificial. I think I saw a report of an artificial world. So
yeah, you've seen it. You've seen it in a fucking Wachowski brothers film called The Matrix.
Right.
That's what you've seen it in.
Right.
We're just gonna fucking hook tubes up to them, you know. So, in an interview with Ukrainian newspaper Delo, Tochlovsky discussed the digital economy in the context of the reproductive technology industry, referencing climbing infertility rates and theories of population collapse presented by the tech billionaire Elon Musk and Chinese businessman Jack Ma. Tochlovsky that biotechnology will save the human race. Reproductive medicine is the future of humanity, said. The most important thing is ectogenesis, the ability to raise a child outside the human body. An artificial uterus, something like factories that we all saw in the movie The Matrix. I think within 5 to 7 years, we will get ectogenesis. Huh? Fucking, like...
What did he say?
What? He literally said the joke we made. That was a joke. We weren't for cereal. Oh my God. When asked how biotech plans to resolve the multitude of legal and ethical issues surrounding his futuristic baby factories, the CEO offered a disconcerting solution. The most important thing, Tochlovsky insisted, is to prohibit law enforcement agencies from interfering in the work. Imagine if any other industry said some shit like that.
You know, but they do. They do. And that's where our government is going to come in. Anything that they want, or at least they want, you know, politicians to give a blind eye, they'll pay them off and be like, don't shake, we're going to do this. We'll pay you off, but don't say he basically said the quiet power out loud.
Louder. Yeah.
You know, so, but
this is fucking sickening, honestly.
I mean, I'm glad you read the story. I mean, thank you for that. But
I knew we needed to.
One is depressing.
I know. I'm sorry.
So, you know, but again, it's like, where in the fuck is our money going? Where are my tax money going?
Yep.
My money. I am not giving. I am not giving money or taking my tax money towards. We don't even know where the money is going.
Matrix shit. Like, okay, I feel you, man. It's so fucked up.
But you know, like, only in independent media we're going to report on a story like that, because there's no way in hell that you're going to hear a story like that in the mainstream media, unless, you know, I could see it like in other countries to kind of shame them. But
yes,
you know, but
yeah,
Ukraine is our golden child right now, so you know we have to protect Ukraine at all costs, even at the demise of its people there. Like, this is just so disgusting.
We're boned.
Yeah, but you know, as I said earlier, this is another class issue. It's like, as you guys were saying in the chat, the rich people in Ukraine don't need to worry about this shit because they're not there.
Yep.
You know, it's the poor single women who have no opportunities that are being forced to do, well, I wouldn't say forced, but is given the illusion of choice. I'm still kind of curious, like, at the end of the day, after they, you know, do the thing with the surrogacy, is it worth it? I'm sure for many they say no.
Yeah, the one that we read said no.
That they only get $300 a month out of this for like a year. I'll say a year. So that's what, like, free, like, just under $4,000 just to do this.
Yep.
Like, yeah, like, this is
gross.
It's gross and like morally, ethically just wrong on all levels.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say, but it's just like, it's gross.
Disgusting.
Really. Yeah, basically.
Fucking anyway, speaking of
well, let's not get to this yet, because I need a second.
You need a breather.
Yeah, I need a second.
Yeah, that's rough.
That
was a rough story. I'm sorry, everyone.
Anyway,
sorry.
You know, but anyway, as I said, thank God for independent media, because you're not going to hear that anywhere else. But like, yeah, so
shout out to Jeremy Lafredo. That was good shit, dude. Good for you for writing that.
Sorry, children.
But yeah, so actually, let me do a check-in just to see. And so $14.98. So
2 more.
You guys are doing the thing. So we just need 2 more. So
just
I can
literally tell 2 people to get in here and sub. That's all you need.
Right. So, you know, so if you like, well, don't like it. Well, like us, don't like the story, but like us.
Yeah.
But then, like, subscribe to us if you're new, so that we can. My guess. Let's see if we can hit 1,500. And this is one of the rare times I'm going to shame you all. If you can help us do that before we end our stream for tonight, it will be most appreciated. And also, we do have a Q&A in the chat. So, as I said earlier, for the new folks, because my guess is, since there's about 34 of you watching now, that Due Dissonance is down with their stream, and you guys are coming on here, so welcome. But we are asking because we're thinking, what can we do as an incentive for folks who do become members to this channel, who want to support us monthly in order to do the work that we're doing. So we're just trying to figure out a way that we can, you know, make it worth your money in order to do that. So we don't want to necessarily do the shit that other channels do either. So, like, if you have an idea of what we can do that we can consider, then please put that in that Q&A ticker up in the chat box up there. Matt had saying Collins, and also saying he'll write a song or make a postcard per request. Okay,
sure, but I'll definitely make a ticker for all the members and stuff. And
I think we've actually
we'll
talked
get that
about
together.
a call. I think we've actually talked about Collin before.
Collins with Collin.
That actually might be a good incentive. Actually, you know, like maybe once a month or something like that. If
I
one
love
of us or
giving
someone.
Collin more work to do. It's the best.
Mm.
Yeah,
Well,
go Collin.
That's Reef's way of saying I have nothing to do with it.
I don't want to do
Let Collin
Collin.
do it.
People are weird. I don't like people. Yep.
I don't like people here, but I still do this.
I feel you. You know. Yeah, but I'm not people. You know? Like that's everyone else. You ready for this one?
So yeah. Well, this is probably on the same.
I know. That's why I brought that Caitlin story at the end. Share everyone up. You know?
That's actually a good story to end on after these two. But I'm more upset in terms of this is a major story, and no one reported on this, which honestly I'm a little surprised. You know, considering I know, like, especially like RVN have talked about Emmett Till. I know we've also talked about Emmett Till in various segments that we have done, but this story kind of went on way under the radar. So we, as I said, we were sitting on this for the last couple of weeks, but I figured someone would have spoken about this up till now, but no. So and actually Ed, I actually said the virtual. I said virtual.
It's specific. You know,
the virtue or the virtual.
Yeah.
No, it's virtual.
Right. You put virtual. You spelled it wrong on purpose.
Yeah. Yes, I spelled it wrong. So yep, gotta change that. So thanks, Ed. So we'll change that. Definitely when it's easy to change, so I can update that later. But
you
guys get the point. So
autocorrect. I blame it on the autocorrect.
Yeah. So let's talk about Emmett Till for a few minutes. So this is from the Business Insider, written by John J. Dorman, who writes, Biden creates a national monument honoring Emmett Till, the black teenager whose 1955 murder was a catalyst for the civil rights movement. So he writes, President Joe Biden on 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, established a national monument in honor of Emmett Till, the black teenager from Chicago whose 1955 kidnapping and murder in Mississippi was a defining spark in the emerging civil rights movement. Biden made the announcement of what would have been Till's 82nd birthday. The president signed a proclamation forming the Emmett Till and Mamie Till Mobley National Monument, which is also reflective of the decades-long civil rights work of Till's mother, who fought valiantly for equality for Black Americans after her son's murder. The monument will consist of a site in Chicago, the city where Emmett Till was born, and 2 sites in Mississippi, where the 14-year-old traveled during that fateful 1955 summer to spend time with his cousins.
Well, sounds like we need to ask Hardlands to do a in-person thing.
We can probably ask
it
for that. I know no matter how much time has passed, how many birthdays, how many events, how many anniversaries, it's hard to relive this. It brings it all back like it happened yesterday, Biden said as he was recounting how he was 12 years old when Till was murdered. The president, speaking at the Eisenhower Executive Office building next to the White House, then pushed back against any attempts to minimize or rewrite history, especially as it relates to some of the most traumatic incidences in the nation's history. At a time when there are those who seek to ban books and bury history, we're making it clear. Crystal clear, he said. We can't just choose to learn what we want to know. We have to learn what we should know. We should know about our country. We should know everything, the good, the bad, the truth. It's who we are as a nation.
And the ugly.
For only with truth comes healing, justice, repair, and forming a more perfect union, he continued. That's what's going to happen when visitors of all backgrounds learn about the history of Emmett Till and Mamie Till Mobley. Telling the truth and the full history of our nation is important. In August 1955, Emmett Till was accused by Carolyn Bryan Dunham of making advances towards her while he was inside the Bryan's Grocery and Meat Market in Money, Mississippi, which at the time was run by Dunham and her then husband, Roy Bryan. The accusation prompted Bryan and his half-brother, J.W. Millam, to abduct Till at gunpoint from the home of his great-uncle, Moses Wright. Bryant and Millam then tortured and lynched the teenager before throwing his body into the Tallahatchie River.
And both of those
Till's
aren't strong enough words to describe what actually happened. You know?
Yeah.
So.
I mean, little kids might be reading this,
yeah.
So, but yeah. Yeah, it's a little more pleasant than what actually did happen to him. Till's battered body was weighed down by a cotton gin fan and was found several days later. His face was unrecognizable. But at his funeral service in Chicago, Mamie Till Mobley insisted that her son would have an open casket funeral.
She's a badass individual.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah. So the world could see the brutality and horror of what her son endured in the segregated South. Biden, during his remarks, also praised the Black press, especially citing Jet magazine and the Chicago Defender for the unyielding pursuit in revealing Till's case, calling them another hero in the story. The Illinois monument site will be the Roberts Temple Church of God in Christ in the Bronzeville neighborhood of Chicago on the city's south side. Where Emmett Till's funeral. Yeah, so Kit can probably do this, definitely do this.
Yeah.
What Emmett Till's funeral was held in 1955. The Mississippi sites include Burball Landing, where it is believed that Till's body was recovered from the Tallahatchie River, and the Tallahatchie County 2nd District Courthouse in Sumner, where Bryant and Millam were tried and acquitted by an all-white jury. Teresa Pernino, president and CEO of the National Parks Conservation Association, said that there are few stories as heart-wrenching as Till's murder, but also remarked that it is a story of determination. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, I kind of get it, but that's kind of a little flowery for this, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it's museum curator, you know.
Yeah.
Like, and it is. She's right, it is. It's heart-wrenching as shit. You know.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I would have used determination. I think given from Miss Mammy, sure, but I don't. Yeah, I'm not sure if that would have been the word I would have used.
It's despicable and disgusting and
tragic.
Yeah,
tragic, and yeah. So I don't know.
I feel you.
This is a story of a brave young mother who experienced a parent's worst nightmare, but found the strength and power to rise up and shine a light on injustice as a leader in the civil rights movement. Mamie Till Mobley galvanized a movement and inspired the nation, she said in a statement. In a 1956 article in Look magazine, Bryant and Millam confessed to the murder. Both men have since died.
Yep. And the woman has died, right?
She, no, that's
she
more
was
to
88
yeah,
years
she
old.
just died. Yeah, she died in April this year, I believe.
Yeah.
Donna died. Yeah, Donna died in April. She was 88 years old. Last December, Congress voted to award the Congressional Gold Medal posthumously to Till and his mother. Last March, Biden signed into law the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act, which made lynching a federal hate crime for the first time in U.S. history.
And that was before or after he wrote the crime bill. Just saying.
The president's push to elevate civil rights leaders and acknowledge the full scope of Black history comes, now this is where it takes a turn, comes as Republicans in recent years have sought to limit how race can be taught in classrooms, with conservatives also targeting diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and hailing the Supreme Court's recent decision to end affirmative action in college admissions.
I.e.
sanctimonious.
Yeah. Biden's original student debt plan, which was invalidated by the Supreme Court, was also intended to be one that had a significant racial equity element, as the administration sought to narrow the racial wealth gap by forgiving $10,000 in loans for individuals and $20,000 in loans for individuals who have received the Pell Grants given to low-income students.
Yep.
Do I need to repeat this again?
Nope. Nope.
I'm
I mean,
going
you
to
might
repeat it
have
anyway.
to.
No, I think it's especially important in this case. And you could say this in the chat if I'm lying. Didn't Biden promise students who went to HBCUs that they would have their student loans forgiven, or students that went to public schools who made under $125,000 a year? Did he not say that was something that he was looking to do?
He also could just wipe out student debt collectively as a whole through the power of the education department, I guess. Who has the power to do that?
Yeah. Well, Cardona can do that.
Right, Cardona. That's it. Secretary of Education.
Yes. So rather than what they're doing right now is trying to piecemeal together.
Yep. And also, who voted for those particular conservative candidates on the Supreme Court? Oh, that's right, Joe Biden.
Right. Okay, so you can fuck off with that. So
yeah, everyone's to blame.
So more spin. Vice President Kamala Harris, who last week sharply criticized Republican Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida. I'm going to speak about her in a second, but over revised state education guidelines for middle schoolers that mandate teachers include instruction about how slaves develop skills, which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit, made reference to the issue again during her remarks at the
Do not come.
Today, there are those in our nation who would prefer. Actually, I'm going to try and read it in her cadence.
Okay.
Excuse me.
What?
Today, there are those in our nation who would prefer to erase or even rewrite the ugly parts of our past, she said. Those who attempt to teach that enslaved people benefited from slavery. Those who insult us in an attempt to gaslight us, who try to divide our nation with unnecessary debates. Did I do all right there?
Close enough.
Did all right. Close enough. DeSantis last week pushed back against Harris, accusing her of seeking to demagogue the curriculum issue, while also stating that he wasn't involved in the changes made by state education officials. Yeah, two things with that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing for this. He was involved. He hired these education officials.
Yes.
So, yes, you were involved, even though you weren't necessarily writing the curriculum.
Yep.
You were involved in the goons that are on the state board, sir. So, indirectly, yes, you were. And I will say this for Vice President Kamala Harris, if you can stop 1 second. Kamala is Indian. Okay? Let's, at least culturally. Okay?
Like Elizabeth Warren Indian or?
No. Indian
okay.
as in on the mainland.
Gotcha.
Like not Native American here, but like her mother is Indian. Her father is biracial from Jamaica.
Oh,
Keep
shit.
that in mind. You know, it just kind of baffles me that, and I might get a lot of hate for this, but I don't care. But it just baffles me that because she has a drop of black in her, and some people might make the argument she's not real black, quote unquote, because she's not African American. She's from the Caribbean. So, but even with that, but just because she has one drop of black in her, that makes her black. For all intents and purposes, I don't consider Kamala a black woman. I consider her multiracial. I consider her a woman of color.
And you ain't black.
I consider her culturally Indian.
Yep.
She grew up with an Indian mother, okay, for most of her life. She's only playing black for convenience.
Yeah.
She went to, the only claim that she has is that she went to Howard. That's it.
She got hot sauce in her bag. Don't worry about it. You know?
Right. So, but you notice what she's doing, like, in terms of, like, she's now gone down to Florida to challenge DeSantis in terms of the curriculum, you know, more or less as the virtual signal, you know? But, you know, but it's not coming to, in my mind, it's not coming from an authentic place. It's just more like, oh, I'm the person of color and I'm black, quote unquote. So, you know, I have to stand up for this as my job, I guess. But, you know, but again, this is the same woman who prosecuted how many black families when she was in what state? California? Where
California.
she was state prosecutor in California. Like, you know, so her history has not indicated that she is an advocate for black people.
Enforce the crime bill, you know?
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
So, yeah, so it just, so it's just a whole lot of, but again, you notice how in this article they made the shift from, yeah, we feel sorry for Emmett Till, but Republicans.
Right.
You know, and more specifically DeSantis versus, let's take a look at Biden's history. Let's take a look at Kamala's history. And in my mind, really have disqualified themselves from even mentioning Emmett Till's name. And Bree Newsom Bass, she's an activist, I forgot where, actually kind of agrees with me, where she says, Joe Biden and Emmett Till were only 2 years apart in age. All of this performative pretending not to know about the lynching culture of white America is exactly that, performative. Come on. White America culture is one of the most violent cultures in history. That's the truth that it has to be constantly buried and ignored as they continue to be violent and genocidal towards black people and anyone who isn't whatever white is at that point in time. White American lynching rituals, like programs in Europe, are about terrorizing an ethnic group, in this case, Black Americans.
Pogroms. Yeah.
White American lynching rituals continue to this day. Mainstream U.S. culture is so putrid with anti-Black racism that people mostly normalize racist violence. And the reality of white people lusting to terrorize and murder Black Americans whenever they feel structural whiteness is threatened.
Also,
yeah, so Dr. Nick, Dr. Nick, you're right. It's not just Blacks, but I think given our history, I think it's definitely more, especially elevated.
It's always class. It just happens to be that black people end up being in a lower class because white people make sure they stay there.
Right.
You know, so it's always economics, but you know,
right.
So,
so Chuck Moody, who is, I guess I can call him a friend of sorts, but he knows who I am.
Yeah.
He lives in DC as well.
He's around on Twitter.
Also, he made a comment. It's good to have a national monument to honor Emmett Till and Mamie Till Mobley, but Biden also increased the number of federal police. It was police who protected Carolyn Bryan Dunham and refused to serve a search warrant found 87 years later.
67.
Symbolism must complement justice policies, not substitute for it.
Yeah.
So what does he mean by that? I'm going to tell you what he means because he actually did the work for me, and he took a screenshot of this article. But we're going to read it to you now, at least most of it. So this is from The Guardian, where it writes, and I think this was written back in the fall, I believe, of this past year. So Emmett Till accuser received protection from police, she said in memoir. Recently emerged book sheds new light on lynching after grand jury declined to charge Carolyn Bryan Dunham.
Yep.
By her own telling, Carolyn Bryan Dunham received preferential treatment rather than prosecution by Mississippi authorities after her encounter with Emmett Till led to the lynching of the black teenager in the summer of 1955.
That's the 1955. That's not that long ago.
Right.
Like, most of our parents were born maybe 10 years off of that. Like, mine was in the 50s. My mother was 5 years old when this happened.
My parents were teenagers by this time.
Yeah.
Just to give you an idea how old my parents are. But you know, they are as old as Eric Till would be now if he was still alive.
Yep.
Yeah, my parents are just as old as this, basically. Instead of arresting Dunham on a warrant that accused her of kidnapping days until after Till's abduction, an officer passed along word that relatives would take her and her 2 young sons away from home amid a rising fervor over the case. Dunham said in a 2008 memoir made public last month. The sheriff would later claim Dunham, 21 at the time, could not be located for arrest.
Yep.
See the bullshit that this was in the 50s.
Yep.
Has much changed since then? Nope.
Nope.
Once her husband and his half-brother were jailed on murder charges in Till's death, she said in the unpublished manuscript, 2 men with the sheriff's office drove her and her sister-in-law to the lockup of a relaxed visit outside their cell and even ferried the women back home. Later, before the murder trial, the men somehow were allowed to attend a family dinner without guards, she said.
I'm in danger.
Can you scroll up, please? Yeah. I was shocked. How in the world were they released from jail to come to eat supper with us? I didn't see who dropped them off or picked them up to return them to jail, but we had a wonderful evening together, Dunham recalled. The cognitive
Yes. Yeah.
Dunham recalled in her memoir, written by her daughter-in-law based on the older women's words. Actually, first of all, can I say this? You would think if she knew this, she would have kept this to her grave.
Yeah.
This is some bold ass shit that she was like, yeah, I did it, and what?
The issue is,
what are you gonna do about
it? Deathbed guilt. You know. So
nearly 70 years later, Dunham's retelling of the days surrounding Till's abduction and lynching strokes fresh frustration among relatives of Till and activists pushing for Dunham's prosecution, particularly now that a Mississippi grand jury has decided against charging her with kidnapping in his abduction or manslaughter in his death. For them, the revelations also raise questions about Reverend Dunham, now 88, is still being protected despite what they see as new evidence against her. Collin Dunham has rarely commented publicly on the Till case, as she has not said anything publicly about a recent decision against new charges.
Yep.
That's why her memoir, made public by a historian who said he obtained it during an interview years ago, created such a stir when it was released a few weeks ago. The decision not to indict her following media reports with details of the document, but it's unclear whether grand jurors consider contents of the autobiography. So basically, because it was a book, they were basically like, we can't tell if this is actual evidence or not. Okay, that's some bullshit. But
yeah.
Anyway, in the 99-page memoir, Dunham said Till, 14 and visiting relatives in Mississippi from Chicago, walked into the family-owned store where she was minding the counter on 24th of August, 1955. Neither her husband, Roy Bryant, nor his half-brother, J.W. Milham, were around that day. It was just her and Till, who also went by the family nickname of Bobo. In the account, Dunham repeats her testimony about the murder trial that Till grabbed her and made lewd comments. He also whistled, she said, in the only part of her story backed up by Wheeler Parker Jr., Till's cousin and a witness during an interview with the Associated Press. Evidence indicated Till was abducted at gunpoint days later by 2 armed white men, and a woman probably identified the youth for them. While Dunham denied in the memoir identifying Till and says she in straight tried to help him, lies. I'm sure she was named in the kidnapping warrant along with Brian and Wilhelm. Donna was never arrested despite police knowing where she was located at least part of the time. For a period, Dunham said she was spirited away with the knowledge of officers. That's such an interesting way. And shuffled between homes by the Bryant family. So if she didn't do anything, why was she in hiding?
Yep.
Then, with Dunham in the courtroom, the 2 men were tried and acquitted in Till's murder. The kidnapping charges were dropped later, and no one has been charged or tried since. After their acquittal, Bryant and Wilhelm admitted to the abduction and killed in an interview with Look magazine. In the memoir, Donna said she did not even know there was a warrant for her arrest until an FBI agent told her during a renewed inquiry decades later.
Yep.
You see, like, there's just so many layers to this. Like,
yep.
Mississippi, like the local police, Mississippi State Police, the FBI. And actually, you know what? Biden, again, and this is what I wanted to bring that back to. Like, this came out late last year, and I'll get to your super chat in a second, Dr. Net. But like, again, with the platitudes and all, why didn't Biden enforce this?
Yep.
Like, this happened last year. All of this kind of came out like last fall, at least when the article was written last fall.
Well,
so why didn't Biden
virtue signal later, Collin?
I guess.
So
shout out to Nick, Dr. Nick, for another super chat.
Yeah, I would argue they're probably the ones that would be aware, Nick, but I feel you.
Right. That's the problem, CRC. You and Joe Nice think back history starts in the States in 1619, when in fact it starts in the Americas way before 1619. It's Black history, not history of Blacks in the U.S. No, you're right. No,
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, we're aware.
Like, I would argue, no, I'm well aware of that. But I'm just saying in this case, this is recent.
Yeah.
Like, this is basically within our definitely within our parents' or grandparents' lifetimes.
Yeah, this is touching us.
Right. So this is more closer to us than like to my ancestors back in the 1600s.
Yeah.
But
yep.
You would think, from then to now, relatively, that things would have gotten better for Black people. And obviously with this, you could tell that's far from it. But again, my point is, rather than giving the virtual signal, like, Biden could have pushed for Dunham for her arrest. And why didn't he? Well, we know why, and you guys are smart. You can make that conclusion on your own. But again, it's just the idea of like saying, oh, we have to learn from our history, but not doing anything to ensure that, an anti-lynching bill, whatever, doesn't mean a damn thing if you're funding the police more.
Yeah.
And like, police don't have to lynch us anymore. They can just beat us to a pulp if they choose to, just because.
Yeah.
So, you wrote an anti-lynching bill, but we're still in trouble with the cops either way. So it really doesn't do. So this anti-lynching bill to me is just a whole lot of nothing. But anyway, the warrant sat unknown and unseen in the basement of a Mississippi courthouse until June of last year, where members of the Till family and others found it during a search. At the time of the killing, Dunham wrote, they didn't even tell me there was a warrant. I was never arrested or charged with anything, she said. The nagging question for
Which
some
means they only did it to cover their own ass. That's what that means.
Right. Yeah, because the police didn't want to be implicated in this, even though this was decades ago. Keith Beauchamp, a filmmaker and activist who helped find the warrant, believes the decision against indicting Dunham lies not with the grand jurors who voted against new charges, but a system that goes back generations.
Yep.
Mississippi law enforcement, which was all white at the time of the killing, allowed Dunham to avoid justice in a misguided quest to protect white womanhood, she said, and that same veiling is covering her now, or at least while she was alive.
Yep.
Chivalrous impulse allowed this woman to go untouched for 67 years, said Beauchamp, who released a documentary, The Untold Story of Emmett Louise Till, in 2005, and helped write and produce the upcoming movie Till, a drama second to premiere in October. By the way, I've seen a clip, I think Reef showed this to me, of like the scene,
the mother at
where Mama Till is explaining, you know, how she wanted to keep the funeral open casket. Very powerful.
Yeah. Like her in the courtroom. Her in the courtroom is the one I probably showed you. Which is like Oscar nom. Like shit. Right. Very good. Incredible performance.
I should probably watch the whole thing, but I remember that, and I was like, if you ever definitely watch that if you ever get a chance, by the way. I should definitely watch the whole thing at some point. I probably might watch it maybe next week when I
we can find it to watch together. I'll watch that with you. I'm down.
So that could be another
movie night, something like that. Yeah.
With our fans, our members.
Yeah.
But anyway. But in announcing a LaForge County grand jury's decision not to indict Dunham, the district attorney, Dwayne Richardson, on Tuesday cited only evidence. Members of the panel were present with testimony from witnesses who told about the investigation of Till's killing from 2004 till now, he said in a statement. After hearing more than 7 hours of testimony from witnesses with direct knowledge about this case and the investigators that investigated this case, the grand jury determined that there was not sufficient evidence to indict Dunham, said Richardson, who is Black. Members of the Till family weren't pleased with that decision, you think? Yet Pastor Wheeler Parker of Chicago, Till's cousin, who was with the youth the night he was abducted from a family home, sounded a conciliatory tone about the failure to obtain the indictment, a decision which he called unfortunate but predictable. The state of Mississippi assured me and my family they would leave no stone unturned in the fight for justice for my cousin Emmett. They kept their promise by bringing this latest piece of evidence before the grand jury, he said.
Yep.
In her memoir, Dunham denied doing anything to get Till killed and expressed sorrow for his family's too little too late.
But you also did. That's you just being in straight denial. You absolutely had a part in it. The biggest part, in fact.
She portrayed herself as another Karen. Yeah, I changed it.
Yeah, she victiming.
For the horrible crime. As someone who quit trusting strangers and is been hounded by media for decades. That's the least of your worries, honestly.
Right, you're going to be the victim? No, you started the whole thing. What the fuck? Anyway.
For some, enough is enough. Dunham may not have paid the price that some wanted her to pay, but she has suffered for what happened to Till. Anyone who claims otherwise is not being honest with themselves. It's time to let her be. The Greenwood Commonwealth newspaper in LaForge County said in an editorial after the grand jury decision was announced. You can fuck off with that. To Ollie Gordon, another one of Till's cousins, some justice may have been served even without anyone being convicted in the killing. Miss Dunham has not gone to jail, but in many ways, I don't think she had a pleasant life. I think each day she wakes up, she has to face the atrocities that may have come because of her actions, Gordon said. Probably true, but there still needs to be justice in this. And I can't argue really there hasn't been any justice in this, especially in light of what happened to him. So I wanted to play this. I'm not going to play all of it. So this was this was a clip that I found. So Donna, I think her last essentially place before she passed on was in Bowling Green. That's in South Carolina, right? Bowling Green.
I think.
Or I know it's either in North or South Carolina. I think it's in South Carolina, I believe. Could be wrong. Let me know in the chat where Bowling Green is. So basically, there were protesters. This is after the, indictment and whatever. So there are protesters protesting outside her house, and the cops were outside protecting said house. Right? So I want to play a few minutes of it just for you guys to kind of see this record. Some of you, this might be familiar for some, especially if you were witness or part of the George Floyd protests back in 2020. That's exactly what this reminded me of, actually. So, Reef, if you don't mind playing,
yep,
this clip.
With her feet on the table somewhere, and you can't understand how to move and do your job. You don't have the guts. You don't have the nerve to stand up for what is right. But you remember this day. Don't ever forget this day. We were on the side of right. You on the side of confusion. Because some of y'all out there know y'all don't want this mess with Collin Bryant. That's right. Some of y'all out there ran before Collin Bryant to get arrested and be done with it. Look at the shame she's brought to Bowling Green. You got to do your job. You got to be unpopular to do what's right.
That's right.
Don't call Jesus names right. And you a coward. Because that's what you are right now. All of you in the blue, you're cowards. You're not doing your job. This is not what you signed up for.
We work for what is human. We work for what is right. While you stand there and you look at us and laugh at us as though we are hearing wrong. God knows we're here for right. We came as peace. I'm a peace activist. I'm a peace ambassador for this country, for the United Nations. We work.
You notice who's behind her?
Where?
That guy.
Oh. We know him.
Yeah, we
Shout out
know
to
him.
the chairman.
Yeah. And I kind of like whoever's next to him. Fucking bring the heat, young man.
Chairman.
Yeah. Fucking sure. That might not be the chairman. That might be another black man in a beret, but
It looks like him now.
Good for you, though. Whoever you are. If that's a Molly, good for you.
We came as peace. I'm a peace activist. I'm a peace ambassador for this country, for the United Nations. We work for peace, and yet you stand there and you look at us as though we're clowns, as though we've got the problem over here. We're just asking you for your humanity. We're trying to make you be what you ought to be. So please act like you have some humanity. Back away from us. We just want justice.
Private security.
We know that Collin Bryant has come to your city. We're
Government
trying to
security.
save your city from the embarrassment today that's going on over this world, all over the world. They are looking at you,
They have
brother.
the high
They're
ground.
looking at you, brother. They're looking at you, sister. They're looking at your police chief.
Hello
and
there.
they are wondering what in the world is going on. We have not had justice anywhere we've been.
Give up,
It's not
Anakin.
just in Mississippi. And the world today knows it's in Bowling Green too. Because Bowling Green is protecting a criminal. And we're here to say the criminals must pay. And we cannot believe it, as I'm sure people all over this world cannot believe. Yes, they have sent some of our people off to war to fight for this country. And they've come back here, and this is what we face, even from some of our own people in this country who are standing there and who are not protecting us. They're protecting the criminal. Amen. God bless them. God.
I mean, you got the point. That the whole thing is 10 minutes, but it was just more of that for 10 minutes. But
Sure.
So
I could watch that for 10 minutes.
yeah,
you know.
I think for time now.
Yeah.
I think for time now, we'll go on. So this last clip, last tweet for Bishop Talbot Swan. I've had some issues with some things that he has said. But I think he's on point for this. So to end this clip, I'll just read what he says here. So he says, Biden's Department of Justice refused to prosecute Collin Bryant, who admitted that she lied on Emmett Till, causing his murder, and lied on the witness stand to protect her husband, Emmett's murder. Now he has the caucasity to dedicate a monument, a symbol, after failing to provide substance, justice, hypocrisy, disrespect, apathy, racism. But they'll be asking for your votes. Not mine. So yeah. So yeah, that's Emmett Till, fellow ancestor. And yeah, it's a shame that didn't get a lot of play on this in independent media, but but like I said, I think it's important to kind of talk about him, especially in light of recent actions, especially given
well, this story you mainly brought to shout out the hypocrisy of Joe Biden, who has done nothing to change the system that causes all these things in the first place.
And I think, and that's why I think, especially in light of that, because especially in that Business Insider article, they went right into Republicans bad, Republicans are changing the curriculum in Florida.
Democrats are equally a problem in the system.
Right.
So,
exactly. And it's like, Democrats, as of now, have funded the police more. Democrat, they didn't even mention that. Essentially, Biden was complicit in allowing Dunham to be essentially, protected. Like,
well, this is the haves versus the have-nots at the core level. This is always related to class. And look, that you see what. Those cops were more than just white and black out there protecting their fucking, protecting the moneyed interests. So while the people who want justice and peace are always the one that their guns are pointed at, so who knows? But it's just frustrating that this is as good as you'll get. You'll only get symbolic gestures of, it's practically platitudes that I'm sure will give some museum owner, a stipend, and the city of Chicago will, get some back pay out of. But it's a gesture. But fix the system would be a far better gesture.
Right.
But what do I know? So, but anyway, you ready for our next one?
We got one more. Yeah. So let me do a check. Let's do a check real quick. Oh, someone didn't like us because we lost a sub.
Okay.
So. Okay.
Well, whatever.
So.
Sure. But anyway.
But yeah,
that might be YouTube messing with us a little bit. We'll see.
Maybe that's
probably more than likely.
Yeah. So
this article from Caitlin Johnstone that I brought, she's going to talk about some stuff. I think I brought this mainly because I think people need to kind of refocus. I think distractions are easy out here, and Caitlin Johnstone probably agrees with me. But she wants to bring up some stuff that I think people need to hear. And, I get it, but I think we got to use our reasoning brains out here. So she writes this article, searching for Bigfoot is not possible that this right here is the miracle we are yearning for, and that it always has been, that we're not really searching for Bigfoot, but for a different kind of relationship with the ordinary. So she writes, it is not possible that this right here is the miracle we are yearning for, and that it always has been. That we're not really searching for Bigfoot, but for a different kind of relationship with the ordinary. The better humanity gets at sharing information about our world, the fewer miracles and magic beasts there are in it. Before the world was explored and nature scientifically documented, there could be anything out there. Dragons, giants, witches, sea serpents. There be monsters, everyone. Until smartphones became ubiquitous, people were still able to cling to some of the magic and mystery in the form of cryptozoology. Sure, there are no elves or goblins in the lands over the horizon, but maybe there's a giant ape walking upright in those woods by the mountain. Maybe there's a monster swimming in the depths of that lake. Collin, are you familiar with the phrase "God of the Gaps"? You familiar with that?
God at the gaps? No.
Yep. So this is a thing with, I want to say, Galileo. Okay. So this is, we go back to this guy, where essentially the gaps in the scientific theory he was able to produce, he accrued to a higher power, right? That's just the work of God, right? So people have coined the term God of the gaps because of that, right? That God only exists in what we can't see. You know, once we see it, we find out that it may not be there. If that makes sense. Right? That's the classic term. So, you know, things like Cosmos and stuff talked about that and went into more detail. But anyway, that's kind of what Caitlin's alluding to here. So the prevalence of pocket cameras that can circulate video footage around the world spoiled all that fun, because people understand that if cryptids like Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster were real, people would be getting them on video all over the place now. What did they do? What do we actually catch, Collin? Instead, the prevalence of online video footage led to more mundane revelations. Police brutality is more common than previously believed. Palestinians are subjected to horrid abuses. People are more talented, creative, and hilarious than we ever realized, but the magical beings are nowhere to be found, and we can retrospectively conclude that they probably never existed at all. People who claim to have seen angels and witnessed amazing miracles performed by holy men throughout the ages were probably making it up. Your eccentric acquaintance who told you in the 90s that he saw a space alien in his window was probably telling stories. The people who claimed to have encountered Sasquatch and Nessie were probably lying. And there's some dissonance with that in our society today. People hunger for magic and mystery, and they're desperately reaching around for it wherever they can in a rapidly shrinking world. Spirituality, psychedelics, UFOs, ghosts, the Mandela effect, and the occult. Something in us intuits that there must be something more to this thing than we're seeing, right? We know there are no leprechauns or unicorns hiding in the shadows, but we sense that there must be something magical happening here that's evading our perception. It can't just be the dull humdrum of office drama and stress and horniness and Netflix and food and family that consumes our waking attention from day to day. But what if that's a mistake? What if that assumption is based on an erroneous premise? But what if that's... how did I mispull this? What if this experience right now is just as eerily, earth-shakingly novel and miraculous as the heavens parted and you were lifted up into a cloud of angels right this moment as you read this? What if the only thing causing you to see this waking experience right now as any less breathtaking than a dragon's treasure trove and your mind's habituated response to it? I mean, what's yearned for in that sacred space within ourselves can't really be in the discovery of some hidden magic out there in the world, can it? Because even if we discovered it, that would quickly become the mundane norm. If extraterrestrials came down from space and began openly walking among us, it wouldn't really be a big deal at first, but for how long? Or it would be a really big deal at first, but for how long? After a while, they'd just be one more mundane thing happening in the world. Oh, there's Vipvorp. He's an ET. He's my manager at Costco, and he's a bit of a prick sometimes. And then you'd be right back to yearning for some magical hidden novelty. Now, imagine if you were seeing your own life for the very first time. Imagine you'd never experienced this world before, that you'd always been a disembodied consciousness with no world to experience and no sensory organs to experience it with, no neurons to think with or form memories with, and no nervous system to feel with. Then imagine, after eons of this, you were flashed into your current experience right now. It'd be pretty mind-blowing, right? Seeing for the first time, hearing, touching, feeling, thinking. It would be experienced as appearing inside a giant universe made of miracles. Is it not possible then that whatever's happening in the world right now is not the issue at all, and that the real issue is our own perception? That this yearning we feel is summoning us not to seances and weird TikTok rabbit holes about otherworldly experiences, but toward a different way of perceiving. And it is not possible then that we could learn to see the world with fresh eyes all the time, to meet each moment like we've just been born into all this from a yawning infinity of an emptiness. It is not possible that this way of perceiving life as an endless barrage of brand new miracles is far more attainable than reaching around in the world, hoping to brush up against angels and divinity. It is not possible that the only thing causing us to miss out on this way of experiencing is a series of mental habits that can be willfully deprogrammed through conscious intention. It is not possible that right here is the miracle we are yearning for, and that it always has been, that we're not really searching for Bigfoot, but for a different kind of relationship with the ordinary. It's a possibility that might be worth exploring. Maybe that exploration is the real adventure we're being called to here. So, this is a bit philosophical from Caitlin. I think that, she's standing on the shoulders of giants in this here. Calls to Alan Watts that you're thinking too much, you're taking things too seriously, you're looking for stuff that you yearn for that's not there, and really the only thing that's there is what's there, so.
Right. So I think for me, that kind of, why I like this, it kind of helped kind of form the idea of, and I think especially this week, like the last couple of weeks, we're beginning to see this in terms of politics, that we're seeing a lot of people putting hope, and in many cases, like a philosophical hope on these politicians to do something for us in almost kind of like a magical or like wishful way.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say that there's nothing wrong with that. I think, we're human. Like, we always wish for something that we don't have or something that is beyond us. And that's perfectly okay. But I also think that you do have to balance with that, as Caitlin was saying, with the things that you can control.
Yep.
And one of the things that you can control, I think, especially in politics,
yourself.
is what happens is yourself.
Yep.
And how you feel, but also mostly what you can do locally and what you control there and how you can respond to your local politics. I think that's why I think for us, and I know other channels have said, focus primarily on local politics, because that's where you have the most control over what happens, and you really should be most connected to what happens directly in your community.
Yeah.
Because you have better access, not great access, but better access to the politicians that are there. So general rule of thumb, if you don't know who your councilmen are, if you don't know who your state board of education reps are, if you don't know who your governor is, your mayor is, like, that's a problem. But you are able to know, like, Marianne and RFK and Dr. West. Yeah, great. But, like, the people in your community are the people that you should be most concerned about. That's why we say every week, take care of yourselves, take care of your families, take care of your communities, because they are the ones that need the most direct help, especially right now. So yeah, I think just kind of keeping the focus of kind of put the things that more like, I don't know, I'm going to say wishful thinking, but the things that we want to be better or kind of hope are like somewhere out there, you have to have that perspective of, that's one thing if you're working towards that to make that reality, that's perfectly fine. But I think the idea of just wishing it into existence just on that sense of belief, or in many of our cases out of despair, is not
healthy,
necessarily the best way to go, or healthy.
Yeah.
That you should be more interested in things that you can control, or the things that ultimately do affect you most personally.
Well,
so
I think people worry about bleakness of the mundane, right? Which is what Caitlin talks about, right? It's they yearn for something slightly better. Their life shouldn't be this shit. There has to be something else, So I think that's this Carl Sagan's famous, we're all made of star stuff. that's pretty fucking ridiculous. Right. Like that ain't mundane. Right. You know, right. And you shouldn't treat your life as a mundane thing like that.
No. The fact that, and I think, so I think it's just the idea too, as you were saying, you know, thankfulness.
Right.
The idea of you being alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, things are shit.
Happy little accidents.
You're able, like, depending on what time you're watching this, you're able to get up, you're able to eat, you're able to go to work, hopefully, maybe, but you're able to function in a way that you're able to sleep at night. And we don't necessarily know your stories, all of you, but I don't want to necessarily assume everything is great for everybody. You know, that's relative. But if you're able to do the basic shit, you know, that in of it's without much, if any, issues, that in of itself is amazing. And that's not mundane, because there could be a lot more things that go wrong. And, you know, so I think just really don't take your lives for granted. It might seem boring. It might seem mundane. It might seem monotonous, but you're here. And so I think if you really think in terms of, like, if you really think, I don't want to say positively, but you're able to reflect on the things that you're able to do today, I'm sure that you're able to kind of find the hidden mysteries in your day that make it worthwhile if you really look for them. I think the problem is, and I think especially in our culture right now, it's just so much despair in the world. They're hard to kind of find. And I'll definitely admit that for someone who's definitely more cynical in terms of, you know, looking at life. But, you know, that's in a lot of ways why I work with young kids, because it's not that cynical yet. So everything is new to them. Everything is a new opportunity and exciting for them. And that's what helps me to kind of get up in the morning and go to work, because I'm able to kind of, they're able to help me see that ultimately, in a lot of ways, this world is not so bad if you know where to look for it.
Yep.
So, yeah, so I think in live what we read, and actually
Rick Solis putting in the words of Alan Watts, which I should play some Alan Watts at some point and do a segment on him. He's one of my mother's favorites. He's one of my favorites. The meaning of life is just to be alive. It is so plain and so obvious and so simple, and yet everyone rushes around in a great panic as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. Rick, is that from his rat race talk, or I heard that before. It sounds very familiar. But yeah, this is good stuff from Caitlin. I think it helps refocus what everyone, you know, like a lot of people got distracted this last couple of weeks over similar things. So yeah. I'm sure that's why she put this up. But it's just refocus, look for the basics, you know, don't rely on something out of your control to fix you. That's just not going to work, you know?
Yeah. My mom tells me all the time, the things are out of your control. That's what it is, like out of your control. So therefore don't touch it. Don't bother with it, and don't stress yourself out over it. Focus on the things that you can control. You know, and focus on that.
Yep.
You know, and so I think before we end, I do want to check in with Dr. Nick. Because I'm not sure if you're still here, but I just want to clarify.
I think I saw him still here.
Okay, so I just want to clarify something that you were saying in the chat, and I want to make sure I get this right. And feel free to DM your concerns to me if you want, but I just want to, in regards to our talk with JJ and Joe Nice, in regards to our history, I do want to acknowledge that yes, there is a history in the Americas that is often ignored pre-1619. I understand that there are indigenous nations that some of you may be a part of that have existed in this country well before, I want to say, my ancestral cousins got here. I understand that, and I acknowledge that. And I don't
Kon-Tiki is a thing as well. They might have been here before that. So
right. I don't want to, and if you felt that like I was just focused primarily on that, like to the point where you felt slighted, I do apologize, and I didn't want to make you feel slighted in that way.
Yeah.
That being said, as a Black person, and I say ancestral cousins because I'm not African American. My ancestors were dropped off in the Caribbean.
Right. We've talked about it's not just America being a problem frequently.
Right.
So
similar issue. Well, same issue. Just I got dropped off in a different section of the world. You know, my ancestors did. What I mean is in terms of when we say, or at least with Joe or me, and actually I would make the argument, given that we have more European connections way before 1619.
Right.
What in speaking of this country and in terms of how capitalism was used to exploit my community or the community that I'm adjacent to, started in 1619. I just want to make that clarification there.
It's been exploitation of the colonies and the global South as a whole, you know. So we mean all of that. I do
acknowledge that it's not, when I say, and I do acknowledge that it's not just Black people. I do acknowledge that. However, as a Black person,
you have your own
and
special
as my
flavor
dad says to me, right, my first priority has to be for me and my own first. Like, I have to make sure as a representative of Black culture that my community is taken care of. And I am willing to align and ally with other, you know, cultures, especially those, you know, in nominalized communities, especially as we say, you know, the struggle is international. I do get that. I'm speaking in terms of my history, my direct history, how it affected my family and Joe's family, because we both come from pretty much the same culture. That's what we're talking about. It is in no way dismissive or not acknowledging yours. And I'm guessing that you are of indigenous descent. I am not dismissing that. If anything, you know, I celebrate that because you're I'm assuming if you're more indigenous, your ancestors went through similar shit. So I understand that and I do acknowledge that. But I must primarily focus on my culture and how it affected my community and how I can help them first.
And there's intersectionality. We get, you know, we're with you on that. So, but speaking of, I figured we just get this out of the way because why not? We got a little bit of time left. So, but you watched this already, but we can watch this again.
So Fanto, if you clip this,
a fifth segment.
You clip this, fifth segment. So you might want to set this up.
I can do that. So this is a Soviet cartoon from around 1963.
Do we have a British, not British, English translation for this?
Yes, it's in there. English subtitles.
Okay, well, the name of this cartoon?
African Story. I think that's literally all it is. And I have another one called It's Hot in Africa that we can play after this. That's short. But yeah, it's African, you know, Soviet cartoons. They're pretty good. You know, I suggest people go check out The Message as well, with Herbie Hancock soundtrack. That's excellent. Very good. Literally has no dialogue. But this one, very little dialogue, I think, in this too, right? So
No, there's no dialogue. So
yeah, there's some, I think.
There's some, but I think, you don't need to know the dialogue to know what's happening. So
yeah. So if you do read Cyrillic, you're going to be very happy. So, but anyway, here you go. We'll watch this. I thought it was good. So.
And this is Soviet Union.
Yep.
Right?
Yep, 1963. So before the wall came down.
Жил черный человек на своей земле. Щедро давала она свои плоды ему, ибо трудился он на ней в поте лица своего, как трудились и отец его, и дед, и прадед.
The art style in this is very nice, in my opinion.
Yeah, very 60s.
Yeah.
Like Peanuts level, old school Peanuts.
I figured since this is already on YouTube, it's probably fine. So
I'm sure we're gonna get copyright for this.
It's reactions.
Yes. We're commenting on this YouTube. So don't give us a copyright strike for this.
Yeah. Victor the Van, yo, I've seen this. Man, dude's living the life, ain't he? Getting fruits and whatnot. Shit, look at the fucking house. He be catching fish. Oh, he's got a pipe too, my man.
It's not weak though.
Who said?
Человека появился некий гость.
Oh no. White elephant.
Гость растрогался. Какая богатая земля. Мне чертовски повезло, что я здесь первый из зверей.
You don't want that. Stick to what's in your pipe. Don't do it.
Посмотри, человек, не слишком ли бесцеремонен твой гость?
He eating all your fruit.
А, черт.
Oh.
Пока человек увлеченно приобщался к высокой цивилизации, слон сожрал все, что мог. А так как пошел дождь, то настала очередь хижины. Человек обрадовался, что высокий гость лично посетил его скромное жилище. Но у слона были свои планы.
Ты удивлен, что так получилось, человек? Погоди. Господин слон сейчас тебе все объяснит.
Видишь ли, парень, твоя черная кожа покрепче моей, да и здесь нет места для двоих, так что оставайся там, а я тут. Не скучай.
Miles, you hitting that trumpet hard.
Спросил неожиданно появившийся лев.
Oh no, not the lion.
Он отнял у меня хижину. Как ты смеешь клеветать на моего лучшего друга? Под суд!
Look at Kit.
Вот ты уже и под судом, человек.
Слово потерпевшему, объявил председатель лев. Господин председатель.
The vacant.
Уважаемые господа. Я глубоко тронут вашим горячим желанием защитить меня от грубых нападок моего отсталого черного друга.
The magistrate or whatever.
Благодарю.
Financial
sector.
Yeah.
Not sure about this.
I think that's like policeman.
Будьте снисходительны к бедному черному человеку. Ему надо терпеливо объяснить.
Yes.
Что в обмен на щедрые дары нашей цивилизации он обязан отдать то, что у него есть. Плоды, хижину, землю, а не вызывать возбуждение безответственными протестами.
Irresponsible protests.
Uh-huh. Where have we heard that shit before? Yeah, Elephant is the evil oligarch.
Yeah.
Rhino. That's probably a dog. Like a dingo or whatever. Yeah.
Именем высокого и авторитетного суда. Обвинение.
The accusation.
Человек, слушай же решение суда.
Нападение на господина слона. Присвоение имущества господина слона. Сигарет и журналов. Виновен.
Elephant was in self-defense.
Решение наверняка будет справедливым. Ведь господа звери известны как беспристрастные джентльмены. Издавна самим Богом призваны охранять интересы низших рас.
Protect the interests of the lower race. Right.
Но, учитывая отсталость и дикость человека, суд считает возможным на первый раз простить его и разрешить ему построить себе
They'll forgive him this time and allow him to build a new hut for himself.
Видишь, какие доброжелательные судьи. Сама справедливость.
Shit, look at his hut. He built that. Oh, shit. All right, well, build another fucking hut.
Right.
Taxman, maybe? Probably.
Which one?
The little dog.
Что же ты теперь будешь?
Right, it might be the police, maybe, or police, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter.
It's like a
I think
French
it's
police
just-
uniform.
Хорошо
Looks like
еще,
to
что они
me.
не стали судить
So,
тебя
I
за
think that these are
новые
aspects of
преступления.
capitalism, so whatever.
And it's good that they didn't
Поистину,
charge you with a
они к
new
тебе
crime.
доброжелательны.
They're very friendly to you.
А может быть, ты действительно виновен?
Maybe you are really guilty.
Виновен в том, что не похож на них.
Guilty of not
Виновен
looking
в
like
том, что
they
это
do.
твоя земля.
Guilty of being the owner of your land. I'll share this in the chat and description below too.
Надо же
So if you want to
что-то...
share this with people like
делать.
RBN or
И человек решил действовать.
no.
Вот вам новая хижина. Одна на всех.
Now, this is a cartoon. Don't get any ideas from a cartoon, everyone. Don't do it. Whatever you do.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Very happy.
Still happening now. Yeah. Yeah.
Ну а теперь...
Дорого обошлось человеку знакомство со звериной цивилизацией. Но зато он многое понял И многому научился.
The end. So you want to talk about that and I'll queue up this next one? And we can get out of here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, first, again, this was the Soviet Union back in the 60s. So,
60s. We're about to go back to the 30s, you know,
right.
and see what they thought then.
Like, and guys, you've seen like a lot of the old Disney cartoons or even like the Looney Tunes, Warner Brothers cartoons back in the day, you know, and how they depicted Black people back then, you know, like especially given Jim Crow era, you know. So this is like, this guy wasn't a slave.
Yeah.
You know, like, number one, this is based in Africa, but it's not like he wasn't poor, he wasn't malnourished. Like
he was living good.
He was living well, seizing the means of
Happy.
production, like happy.
Puffing on his
and
old pipe.
positive.
Happy as shit.
Right. Right.
So
So obviously, you know, like the animals, and they were all African based animals. I think it makes sense. Theme.
Yeah.
But you know, they all represented aspects of capitalism that are used to exploit. You know, you could look at it as either people, class, race. I think those are like two things. You know, so yeah, so yeah, so it was. Thank you, Reef, for for showing me that. Like, again, like, you know, so but yeah, but this is like, again, Soviet Union produced this.
Yep.
You know,
So
I don't know if like, Western cartoons, at
right,
least
especially
back
in the
then,
60s.
right, were portraying Black people, especially
that
Black
light.
people from Africa, in
Right.
that light.
No.
So, so yeah, I thought very well done, and
Yep.
honestly, like if I was teaching middle school, I would show this
Yeah.
to my students.
That's
just in
yeah.
terms of like, but I think also kind of taking some of the idea of like, I think we're kind of indoctrinated into thinking that the Soviet Union / Russia is bad, I think we generally in the West have been indoctrinated in that way of thinking.
Yeah.
That's not to say there isn't bad things, but but there are some good aspects, to countries, like that they're able to put stuff like this. But I think given, Soviet Union was a communist country at that time,
Yep.
so everything, they wanted to put things in terms of from an anti-capitalist standpoint. So it
Right.
makes sense. But again, this is Russia
Yeah.
that made
Yep.
produced this. So yeah,
Now,
it was,
how do you think Black people were portrayed in the 1930s here in the States? Because that's what we're going back to, the Soviet Union. So,
well, I know here. I'm just thinking what cartoons
we're in
there
the
were at that
30s.
time. Yeah, I
Um,
like the immediate one I'm thinking like is Snow White, like
Right.
the Disney version of Snow White,
Yep.
like
And like some black and
minstrel.
white stuff. Right. Yeah, literally.
like
Yep.
minstrel
Literally
show,
Dumbo
basically.
with the like minstrel crows. Yes.
Right.
So,
Yeah. So minstrel like aspects, like
and I've not
blackface,
seen this one.
Bigfoot.
So
Okay.
this one could be, I don't know where it's gonna go. If it gets too bad, we'll bail, but we'll see. History, everybody. Let's watch it. This is titled It's Hot in Africa.
1936.
Yep. Sergei Mikhalkov. The composer, A. Akskanov. Grigory Kozlov, Boris Yoskin. Okay. I mean, even if he is a monkey, he's made a hot air balloon and a sailboat, traveled all the way to the North Pole and back, you know? Like... Right. Yeah, ice cream's gonna be here. We got it. Monkey go bring banana ice cream back.
Oh, okay. Now I think I get it. Oh, that's the plot.
Yeah.
It's hot, so they're making ice cream.
Yep. That's it. Like, we have our own production. We can make stuff. We just gotta go get it. Yeah, it's like very basic cartoon plot, you know? Go get the ice cream.
Yeah, I was just wondering what's the connection to like
Africa?
Climate.
Yeah.
Africa.
Well, this could be, you know, hey, come to Moscow, it's cooler. You know? Like, ooh, burbs. The animation on this is really well done for the 30s. They made it back. Look at him do it. Look at the walk. Yeah, we fucking did it. He brought his little guitar and shit. Like that's like that wide Putin walk he's got going on, you know? Like... Ice cream! Although those wouldn't be in Africa, but, you know. They don't have kangaroos there. Don't drop that ice cream, bro. We went a long way to get that shit. Fucking giraffe. Hope you get brain freeze. Karma, bro. No, gamer, this is Soviet animation. I think the allegory is that the walrus is Russian, coming to help the Africans with ice cream.
Maybe. Probably, yeah.
I would imagine. Go up to the Arctic North where we have plentiful ice, you know?
Right.
So...
Yeah, so...
But anyway,
yeah.
I just figured that'd be a good way to end things here. So...
Yeah, but I think just before we go to end, I think bringing it back to the first segment, this is... You know, African nations now are kind of mentioning this is the sentiment that they have for Russia because, you know, like... you know, given the communist, you know, ideology, you know, Russians have been somewhat, at least back then, supportive of Africa and their needs. And I think just given what we saw in the animation, it definitely kind of reflected that. So it makes sense that Africa has a more favorable reputation with Russia, especially now with Putin, you know, making his offers that he's willing to support the continent. So
yeah,
so I think, I mean, just this all comes to say, you know, just regarding with Russia and Ukraine, it's complicated. It's not as clear cut as what I think mainstream media just often says sometimes. It's just Russians bad and Putin bad. Like, in the same way that people can make the argument here that Biden, he all right. I mean, he does bad things too, but he's okay. Like,
yeah,
Russians will probably can say the same thing about Putin too. And I think, you know, and again, that's not to say we're fans of Putin at the same, but, you know, we do it here. If Biden does something worthy of, you know, like praise or any politician,
we would give him that. Yeah.
We will give him that, but right now there really isn't much, if anything, that I could say for me personally that Biden is worthy of that praise. Considering my connection with Africa and considering, like, you know, knowing people personally who live there still, who I love and care about, you know, what Putin is willing to do for the continent, I think is huge. That being said, though, as I said, ideally, I would love to see it in Africa being like risen up to where we saw in the first cartoon. Is that they own the means of production. They didn't have to worry about anybody that were able to handle things on their own, and they have
even in the second cartoon, it's like the African monkey had the ability to travel, make infrastructure for themselves, right? Like they were able to make the product, they just needed the product to make it with, you know. And like once they were given that, everyone was cool, great, you know. They dealt with their own problems. The little crow tied up the giraffe, like, you know, like they were good. So and it took one walrus, not an entire, like, you know, a colony, like not an entire group of colonizers, you know, to take your wealth.
Also kind of speaks to here that I think, especially with a capitalist system, like it can, like our spending is so wasteful, and like you can have several hundred people doing the work that would take years to complete, and even when it's complete, it's not done properly or up to code necessarily. Whereas, you know, just efficient, you know, use the people that you need, do it efficiently, do it well the first time, and you don't have to worry.
I also suggest people after this look up The Message by let's just put in The Message Soviet cartoon, Herbie Hancock soundtrack. I can't play it here because it has some nudity in it, so you know, keep that in mind. But like not gratuitous, but you know, the Russians were kind of horny bastards back then too, so you know, keep that in mind. But yeah, I think these are good. Share this with your friends. You know, we appreciate you. What do we got coming up next week?
So let's pull up our schedule.
Yep, working on it.
I did add it in. So tomorrow, Angel, no, he goes Fridays, but he's going tomorrow live at 1:00. Shout out to our brother Angel for that. 9:00 tomorrow. They pre-recorded, so Indy and Snow Himbo will be doing a second episode of Nobody Wants to Work Anymore. So that's kind of, I want to call it a mini series where they're talking about issues surrounding job hunting and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a riff session between the two on that. Friday at 3 Eastern, Tara will be going live. Do you know of her guests this week?
Not offhand, but stay tuned to Twitter for that. I think we have someone lined up. So,
all right, 10:00 Friday night, we have a replay of Boats from Sunday's stream. Saturday at 8. 8 or he put in 9.
Well,
oh no, it is 8.
9. He just put the face 9. At 8.
8. We have Misty going on for Bitch.
Yeah.
Sunday at 10, Indian Reef with How Do We Miss That? Crab, since you're here, Politically Homeless on Monday. And is Lucy guest starring with you again on Monday? Let us know, but and confirm for us if you're going to go live on Monday. Next Tuesday will be American Tradition with Jesse Jett. It's not included here because it's not next week. And then we'll be back here next Wednesday at 9 Eastern.
Sounds good to me.
So yeah, thank you guys. So make sure you like, subscribe. We ended up $14.97, so we didn't hit our 1,500 goal tonight, but I originally said that was me who sent that tweet.
Go share it with 3 people. That's all you gotta do.
3 people, and like our goal is by the weekend if we can hit 1,500, which I think we probably might by tomorrow, depending. But yeah. So So yeah, but thank you guys so much. Let us know, DM us or send a message to us of incentives that you would like available if you were an INM member or if you currently are an INM member. Let us know. I think definitely maybe like a movie night on Discord could be one thing for our members or something.
Yeah.
That's possible. Crab
We
said
could come
he
up
might
with
be
that.
willing to do something. So yeah, just let us know what perks you would like as far as your membership if you're interested, or if you are a member, let us know and we'll add that to the package as a thank you for supporting us and giving us extra helping us with creating more content for you guys. So we love you and we thank you, and we'll see you guys next week.
As always, kids.
All right, I'm tired.
Labels are bad.
Let's go.
Stay independent. Good night, fam.
Have a good week.
Bye. Have a great time.
We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.